The committee will come to order. Good morning, and welcome to today's hearing on Hong Kong's Summer of Discontent and U.S. policy responses. This is the second China Commission hearing this year on the situation in Hong Kong. During our May hearing, the Commission heard compelling testimony from Hong Kong pro-democracy advocates, including Martin Lee and Nathan Law, who expressed serious concerns about the extradition bill that was quickly moving towards becoming law at that time. That legislation would have put anyone in Hong Kong, including U.S. citizens, at risk of extradition to mainland China, where lack of due process and custodial abuse have been well documented. Over the last 16 weeks, millions of people from all walks of life in Hong Kong have taken to the streets in an unprecedented and sustained show of unity. The protesters have inspired the world and have risked their lives, their health, their jobs, and their education to fight for the future of Hong Kong. Thank you for your courage and thank you for your bravery. We stand in solidarity with you. As protests continue throughout the summer, Hong Kong police use excessive and unnecessary force to target those engaged in peaceful demonstrations. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has called for an investigation. The UK has suspended export licenses for the sale of tear gas and crowd control equipment.
可能的警方暴力开始进行调查。
Smith and I have introduced H.R. 4270, the Protect Hong Kong Act, that would prohibit U.S. exports of police equipment to Hong Kong.
我和另一位议员一起
U.S. companies should not be selling equipment used to
发起了
violently
保
crack
护
down
香
on
港法案。
pro-democracy protesters. I hope Congress will pass this legislation as soon as possible.
我希望我会能够尽快通过这条法案。
The people of Hong Kong are calling for greater accountability and democratic participation.
这个抗争已经从单纯的反修例变成了香港人对于更大的民主、香港人更大的民主诉求。 今天我希望听到，抗争开始以来，事情都有哪些进展？中共和香港政府都有哪些做法？
Sino-British Declaration and Hong Kong's basic law. This is an international treaty signed by the Chinese government.
中英联合声明是一项国际条约。
aim of electing its chief executive and legislative council members by universal suffrage.
它最终的目标。 2014年的雨伞运动是由中共当局对于香港民主诉求的忽视引起的。 过去几年中，中共当局一直在打压香港的言论自由。我们看到他们取消民主派议员的议员资格。
Anson Chan, the former Hong Kong chief secretary and legislative council member, recently offered this insight, and I quote, "If only Beijing would understand what makes Hong Kong tick, what are the values we hold dear, then they can use that energy to benefit both China and Hong Kong."
最近我听到一位香港议员说，如果北京真的能够理解香港的话，香港人愤怒的来源就是香港的领导人不懂得香港人的愤怒到底是为什么。 如果香港人能够自由地选举他们的领导人，
and if the chief executive and legislative council members were elected without Chinese influence over candidate selection. In light of the continuing erosion of Hong Kong's autonomy and the recent violence against official protesters, I believe it is time for the United States to reconsider its policies toward Hong Kong. U.S.-Hong Kong relations are governed by the U.S.-Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992.
美港关系是在1992年美港关系法案下建立的。
I'm proud to support H.R. 3289,
我支持香港民主与人权法案这条法案。这条法案要求美国对香港的自治程度进行每年进行测定，以保证美国继续给予香港，以判断美国是否要继续给予香港贸易上的优惠待遇。
Over the years, Hong Kong has prospered and become the financial center of Asia because of its strong commitment to the rule of law, good governance, human rights,
多年来，香港由于对于法治的坚持，使得这个城市成为了亚洲的金融中心，经济上十分繁荣。
So to be clear, we stand together with the people of Hong Kong and indeed all the people of China when we express our concerns about the human rights violations.
我们在关注香港人权迫害的同时，我们和香港人站在一起，也和中国人民站在一起。我们希望保护香港的自治和法治。
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this important hearing, for your willingness to host it here in the Senate side.
Kind of nice over here.
It's quiet.
Yeah.
A little different pace. We had 4 votes yesterday. Today people will be exhausted.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you for doing this. I look forward to our continued partnership on this commission, and particularly as it relates to this topic. I also want to thank all of our witnesses, especially those who are on the front lines and have even been jailed multiple times, and we'll hear from them today about the things that have been done against them. And your commitment to freedom and democracy, it is inspiring. It really is inspiring for those of us who live in this republic. It reminds us of why so many of us serve here and what we seek to preserve around the world, and that's why we want to stand with you. Your fight and the fight of your fellow Hong Kongers is the fight of every human who yearns for liberty and dignity and demands that their fundamental rights be respected and be upheld. Let me say at the outset to the people of Hong Kong, we stand with you, and by we I mean this is a bicameral, bipartisan commitment, as you will see today and have seen in the past few days on these efforts across both political parties and every major figure. And not only that, but many Americans stand with you in your fight to keep your long-cherished freedoms. It was only a few months ago in May that we held a hearing on Hong Kong. It was titled Hong Kong's Future in the Balance, Eroding Autonomy and Challenges to Human Rights. At that hearing, and even before, it was highlighted on the facts that the Chinese Communist Party has been eroding Hong Kong's autonomy and freedoms guaranteed by the Joint Declaration on the basis of law. The May hearing discussed the extradition bill that, if it would have passed, would have exposed everyone in Hong Kong, and that includes, by the way, 80,000 Americans who reside there, would have exposed them to the justice system, or the so-called justice system of the Chinese Communist Party. The same justice system that routinely tortures those in its custody, that denies critically needed medical care, that arrests lawyers for serving their clients, and that places the desires of the Communist Party above every and any demand for justice. The proposed bill exposed the very real and increasing threat to Hong Kong's autonomy, but few of us could have anticipated the events that would follow. Since June, the people of Hong Kong have bravely taken to the streets for 15 straight weeks in more than 400 separate demonstrations involving more than 8 million people of every age and every background. Recently, there have been very credible reports that have emerged of the police's brutal treatment of demonstrators while in their custody. This weekend, for example, we saw images of the police holding down a protester whose head was bleeding and spraying into the wound on the head pepper spray, which is an act of total cruelty. We watched the police throw tear gas grenades at journalists, many of whom are far away from the demonstrators. Since the 21st of July, pro-Beijing thugs associated with organized crime and the party's United Front activities have violently confronted demonstrators and journalists and innocent passerbys, and the police just looked on, looked the other way, and in some cases even cooperated. And while detained demonstrators have been beaten or their faces smashed into the concrete, journalists have photographed these same thugs in detention, quote-unquote, smoking and playing on their cell phones after attacking journalists and demonstrators. Although Hong Kong's chief executive may have promised to withdraw the extradition bill, when the Legislative Council reconvenes in October, the government's violent response to the demonstrations demands accountability. And yet, Lam and the Hong Kong government refuses to press for any accountability for the violence by Hong Kong security forces that was committed and continues to be committed against peaceful protesters. The chief executive did not listen to the outcry against the bill in Hong Kong since its introduction, rather tried to ram it through the legislature. So what's at stake? The Hong Kong government's stubbornness in the face of public outcry has launched one of the greatest people power movements we have witnessed in recent memory. The actions of the government and the people demonstrate that there are two Hong Kongs. The Hong Kong of the government, totally leveraged by the Chinese government, has proven that it is not committed to a free and autonomous future for Hong Kong, nor is it one of rule of law or of justice. The other Hong Kong, the real one, is the one of its people, the students and youth activists, artists, journalists, doctors and nurses, lawyers, accountants, business people, from every walk of life, the city's people of all ages who have shown us a Hong Kong with a vibrant civic life, prepared to stand up for its own autonomy, democracy, and liberty. It is clear that these two very different Hong Kongs are colliding, and therefore the city is at a crossroads. The fact of the matter is maintaining Hong Kong's autonomy is critical to U.S. interests, and it also has real implications for the United States and for the rest of the world. Hong Kong's status as an international trade and investment hub are just as threatened as long as the long-cherished freedoms of the Hong Kong people are being threatened. Threatened, by the way, not by us, but by the Communist Party of China. So it is my belief that it's long overdue for the United States and the free world to respond. I hope we quickly pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, which I hope will be heard next week in committee, so that we can provide this and future administrations with updated tools to respond robustly and flexibly to the Chinese Communist Party and its proxies who are undermining Hong Kong's autonomy. The U.S. government and other democracies need to hold Chinese and Hong Kong officials accountable for their failure to uphold their commitments. The United States and other nations have options precisely because Beijing benefits from Hong Kong's special status, a special status which has made Hong Kong an international financial center, built on the promises that China made to the world with regards to HongOng, which they now seek to break. China's leaders must either respect Hong Kong's autonomy or know that their escalating aggression will lead them to face real consequences, not just from the United States, but from the free world. And I issue one final warning of this regard. I anticipate fully that they will continue their work to turn the system of government in Hong Kong to resemble more like the one that exists in Macau, one that allows them to intervene in the legal system as they wish. So we're here today to examine what has happened, to look forward to Hong Kong's future. There are many challenges in our relationship with China, but Hong Kong must remain a priority. Hong Kong is not a Chinese internal affair, and the world has a responsibility to help the people of Hong Kong move towards a future that protects their individual freedoms and provides for civic well-being. And so I look forward to hearing your views in today's discussion, and I thank you for your courage and for your commitment.
Thank you very much. And let me just emphasize one thing Senator Rubio said. I mean, we represent up here on this commission a diverse political spectrum from the left to the right and everything in between. And we have lots of differences on lots of issues. We probably couldn't even agree on what to have for lunch. But we do have one thing in common, and that is we believe that your cause is noble and just. And we are honored that you are all here today. So we want to welcome this distinguished panel. I will introduce each one of them, and then we'll go to testimony.
下面我们马上开始听证。
Okay, we'll yield to Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. And what a panel of heroes, the best and the bravest and the brightest. Thank you for being here and bearing witness to a very ugly truth as to what Hong Kong is doing. It has been a long, hot summer in Hong Kong, as we all know. The inspiring and courageous protests there are a daily reminder of the stark differences between free and authoritarian societies. The people of Hong Kong have shown the world that a free people will not accept the boot of repression without protest. The millions of Hong Kong protesters have also done the world a great service. They have exposed Beijing's plan to erode freedoms guaranteed to the people of Hong Kong by international treaty. They have exposed Beijing's pernicious
对
and
待
repressive
国际条
behavior.
约，
And
是
make no
如
doubt
何
about
的
it, the
压
Chinese
迫香港的
government
民众
is。both uniquely repressive and incredibly paranoid about maintaining its grip on power. Today, there are over 1 million
北
Uyghurs
京当
interned
局
in Orwellian
十
political
分看重他
education
们的
camps.
权利。
Human rights lawyers have disappeared and been horribly tortured in detention. Christians, Tibetans,
人
and
权
labor
中国的
activists
人权
and
律
journalists
师
as well face egregious
记者
abuse and the most
藏人
intrusive system of surveillance
新疆
operating
人
in the
都受
world
到了
today.
迫害和压迫。
Why would anyone want their political fate determined by Beijing? If given a choice, no one would.
在
As
这种情况
inspiring
下，
as the
怎么会有人
protests
希望
have been,
他们的
they
命
have
运
also
掌握
raised
在北
serious
京的手
concerns
里
about
呢？
the actions of the Hong Kong
没有
and
人希望
Chinese
他们的
Communist government.
命
The
运
violence
掌
and
握
the
在
use
像
of
北京这样
force
的政府手
perpetrated
中。
against the protesters by thugs and police, I repeat myself, is extremely alarming. Representative
香
McGovern
港
and I
的
were the
暴
first
徒，
members of
香
Congress
港
to call on
的
the
警
Trump
察
administration
对于
to suspend the
和一些
sale
暴
of
徒
tear
对于
gas,
抗争者的袭
rubber
击
bullets,
是非
pepper
常的
spray, and other crowd control
令人
equipment to the
惊
Hong
悚
Kong
令
police. And I agree with him. We need to quickly pass the
我
Protect
们
Act
需要
that
尽
we
快的通过
introduced last
保
week.
护香港法案。
Also alarming are the repeated and irresponsible threats of
另一个令
intervention
人震惊
made by
的
Chinese
是
officials,
一
particularly
点
given
是
that
中
this
共
year
当
marks
局
the 30th
发
anniversary
出的
of the Tiananmen Square
动
massacre.
用军队
The Hong Kong and
干
Chinese
涉香港
governments
的
are
动用
alone
军队
responsible
对
for
香
the
港进行
grievance
镇压的这种威胁。
expressed by the protesters, and they alone can peacefully end the protests by
在
addressing the
警察不
demands
在场的
for
情况
universal
下，
suffrage and
香港的抗
investigation
争
of
者可以
police
非常
threats.
和平理性的
Blaming
发
the
出他们的
United
诉
States
求，然
government
后自行
and
结束
blaming
游
the U.S.
行。
Congress for the protests
可
is
是
a
中国
act of cowardly propaganda
却
and not befitting of a nation such as China, which has aspirations of global leadership. It is time for the U.S. policy to respond
却
to
责备美
Beijing's
国政府
long-term ambitions in the
在
Hong
香
Kong
港
and pass the
却
Hong
把
Kong
在香港发
Human
生的一
Rights
切
and
归罪于美
Democracy
国
Act.
政府，这是
5
一个非
years
常
ago,
懦弱的
Mr.
行为
Chairman,。I introduced the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act with my CECE co-chair, Senator Brown.
之前
The bill
我
allows for
将
more
香
robust
港
U.S.
民主和人
response to
权
the
法院
steady
引入
erosion
国
of
会，
Hong Kong's autonomy and human rights. Over the years, Senator Rubio and I have
以保护香
upgraded
港
the
的
bill, and
自
you
治
as
和
well,
民
to
主。
reflect the kidnapping of booksellers, the disqualification
可
of
是
elected
过去几
lawmakers,
年中，
the
香港的书
political
商被绑架，然后
prosecutions
被
of
消失。
Joshua Wong, Nathan Law, Benny Tai, and others. However, every time,
包括黄之
every
锋、
single
罗
time
冠
we
聪在
pushed
内
for
的
passage, there was
香港
opposition
的
from
人权人
the
士都多次
diplomats,
被关
the
押。
so-called experts, the committee chairs in both the House and the Senate, and the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. We were told not to upset the status quo. We were told that upgrading U.S. policy would undermine their efforts with Beijing and its hand-selected political leaders in Hong Kong. We were told that our bill would cost U.S. businesses. It is the exact same advice
有
that
些
we have been
人
hearing on
有一些
China
专家
since Tiananmen
跟我
Square.
们说，如果我
And
们
the
通
big
过这
issue
个
was
法案，
then
将
and
会
that
伤
then.
害中美
China
关
experts have
系。
failed the American
可
people,
是
and their
这
advice
些专
helped
家
to gut
让美
parts
国
of
人
our own
失望
economy.
了。
Their advice this time will fail the people of Hong Kong as
这
well.
次他们
Specifically,
的
Mr. Chairman, as you know,
这次他们的
the
建
bill
议也会让香
directs the
港人失
Secretary of
望。
State to certify to Congress annually whether Hong Kong continues to deserve
这
special
项法
treatment
案
under U.S. law
将会
from
每
mainland
年
China
对香港
that
的
is
自
different
治
from mainland
自治
China
程度
in
进
such
行
matters
评
as
定，
trade,
以决定是否
customs,
继续给
sanctions,
予香港
enforcement, law enforcement,
贸易优惠待
cooperation,
遇，
and protection of human rights and the rule of law. It directs the
保
State
护
Department
香港的
not,
法
I
治
say
和
not,
自由。
to deny entry visas based on an applicant's arrest or
同时
detention for participating in nonviolent
对于
protest
那些
activities
由于
in
参
Hong
加
Kong.
抗
It
争活
requires an annual
动
report from
被
the
关押、
Commerce
被判刑
Department
的
on whether the Hong Kong government
活动
adequately
人士，
enforces
美国
U.S.
不
export
会
controls and sanctions
拒绝
laws.
他们的，
It requires
不
the
会因为
Secretary of State to
这
submit
种关押
a
拒绝他们的
strategy
签证
to Congress
申请入
to
境。
protect U.S. citizens and businesses in Hong Kong from the erosion of autonomy
同时也
and the rule
会
of
保
law
护在
because
港
of
的美
actions
国公
taken by
民
the
和美国
Chinese
公司
Communist
免
government.
受中共
Requires
政
the
府
President to
的
identify
伤
and
害，
sanction persons in Hong Kong or in mainland China responsible for the erosion of Hong Kong's
制裁
autonomy and serious abuses of
那
human
些
rights. We have
在
wide
香港或
agreement
在中
for
国那
this
些
legislation.
迫害
It is
人
time
权的
that it
人。
passed. I've heard it said that the business of Hong Kong is business. I believe it's clear that the business of Hong Kong is freedom. The people of Hong Kong are working to protect the rights and rule of law that are the foundation of the city's prosperity and unique vitality. This commission and so many of our colleagues in both the House and the Senate stand united with the people of Hong Kong and will not be silent in the face of threats to their continued liberties, guaranteed liberties, and way of life. The U.S. and the international community cannot be silent or just make noise with nothing that backs it up. The whole world has a stake in the peaceful and just resolution of Hong Kong and the survival of the one country, two systems model. Hong Kong people, 加油！
加油！
I am proud now to introduce our esteemed panel of expert witnesses this morning. Three of our witnesses traveled all the way from Hong Kong to provide their testimony to this Congress. The panel includes Joshua Wong, pro-democracy activist and the Secretary General of Demosisto. At the age of 15, he organized protests against patriotic education in Hong Kong. Subsequently, he rose to prominence as a core leader of the 2014 Umbrella Movement. Mr. Wong was also one of Hong Kong's first 3 political prisoners since 1997, sentenced in 2018 with Nathan Law and Alex Chow for leadership roles in the Umbrella Movement. Most recently, he was arrested in August 2019 for his role in a peaceful protest outside police headquarters during the anti-extradition bill movement. Denise Ho, a pro-democracy and LGBTQ rights activist, and an award-winning Hong Kong-based singer, producer, and actress. Ms. Ho is a prominent supporter of the anti-extradition bill protests in Hong Kong and a leading figure in Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. She was arrested during the 2014 Umbrella Movement for taking part in nonviolent protests. The Chinese government has banned her from performing in China, and in July 2019, Ms. Ho addressed the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Hong Kong, during which she was repeatedly interrupted by the Chinese delegation.
演讲介绍香港的情况，可是这个发言却多次被中共代表打断。张坤阳，他是香港大专学界国际事务代表团的发言人。
with the primary mission of raising global awareness and support for Hong Kong's anti-extradition bill protesters and the pro-democracy movement. Mr. Jung has participated in and organized exchange events and conferences in Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, United States, and United Nations, and he recently gave a speech in the UK House of Commons in support of Hong Kong. Sharon Home, the Executive Director of Human Rights in China, where she leads its international advocacy and strategic policy engagement with NGOs, governments, and multi-stakeholder initiatives. HRIC has covered human rights and democracy development in Hong Kong extensively, including the 2014 Umbrella Movement. Ms. Home has presented in numerous hearings on a wide range of human rights issues before key European, U.S., and international policymakers. She is a professor of law emerita at the City University of New York School of Law and has taught law for 18 years, including training judges, lawyers, and law teachers at 8 law schools in China. Daniel Garrett, a PhD, an author, photographer, and political scientist focusing on Chinese security, politics, and securitization of Hong Kong. Since 2011, he has documented over 600 demonstrations, marches, and rallies in Hong Kong, including most recently the anti-extradition bill demonstrations. Dr. Garrett is a doctoral graduate of City University of Hong Kong with over 20 years of engagement with Hong Kong and completed his dissertation on one country, two systems under China's national security framework. Dr. Garrett was a career national security professional, providing strategic counterintelligence, threat analysis, and served at the Defense Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and in the United States Air Force. So I want to thank you all for being here. We are honored by your presence, and we will begin with you, Mr. Wong.
Good morning, Chairman McGovern, Co-Chairman Rubio, and members of this commission. It's an honor to be invited back to Capitol Hill to speak about developments in Hong Kong. You may recall that I last traveled to Washington more than 2 years ago and testified before this commission in this same building on May 3rd of 2017. While I said back then, Hong Kong's one country, two system was becoming one country, one and a half system. I don't think there's any doubt among observers who have followed recent events. Today, we are approaching dangerously close to one country, one system. The present state of affairs reflects Beijing's inability to understand, let alone govern, a free society. The ongoing demonstration began on June 9th, when 1 million Hong Kongers took to the street in protest of proposed legislation that would have allowed criminal suspects to be extradited from Hong Kong to China, where there are no guarantees of the rule of law. Still, before the night have ended, Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced the bill's reading would assume and resume in 3 days. Hong Kongers were preparing for the last flight on June 12th. And then the unthinkable happened. Knowing that Beijing controlled enough votes in the Legislative Council, protesters surrounded the complex earlier in the morning, successfully preventing lawmakers from convening. I was then serving my third jail sentence. For a moment, I wondered why the news channel was replaying footage of the umbrella movement. Although it was not long before I realized Hong Kongers were back with even stronger determination. Lam suspended the bill on June 15, but fell short of fully withdrawing it. A historical 2 million people demonstrated the following day, equivalent to 1 in 4 out of our entire population. I'm not aware of anything comparable to this level of discontent against a government in modern history. I was released exactly 3 months ago, on June 17, and have since joined fellow Hong Kongers to protest in the most creative ways possible. In addition to the bill withdrawn, we demand Lam to retract label on us as rioters, drop all political charges, and conduct an independent investigation into police brutality. Some of us crowdfunded for newspaper advertisement ahead of the G20 summit in late June, calling for the world not to neglect Hong Kong. Others entered the chamber of Legislative Council complex on July 1st, the same day another 500,000 Hong Kongers protest peacefully. Crowds continue to show up in large number in the past 15 weekends, with more rallies taking place almost daily across the territories. But the government would not listen. Instead of diffusing the political crisis, it dramatically empowered the riot police. The movement reached a turning point on 21 of July. That night, pro-Beijing thugs with suspect ties to organized crime gathered in the Yunnan train station and indiscriminately attacked not just protesters returning home, reporters on the scene, but even passers-by. The police refused to show up despite repeated emergency calls, plunging Hong Kong into a police state with mob violence. On August 5th alone, the day Hong Kongers participated in a general strike, riot police shot 800 canisters of tear gas to disperse the peaceful mass. Compare that to only 87 fires in the entire umbrella movement 5 years ago. The police's excessive force today is clear. Their excessive use of pepper spray, pepper balls, rubber bullets, beanbag rounds, and water cannons, almost all of which are imported from Western democracy, are no less troubling. In light of this, I applaud Chairman McGavin and Congressman Smith for introducing the Protect Hong Kong Act last week. Americans' company must not profit from the violence crackdown of freedom-loving Hong Kongers. Co-Chairman Rubio is also right for recently writing that Hong Kong's special status under American law depends on the city being treated as a separate customs area. Beijing should not have it both ways, wrapping all the economic benefit of Hong Kong's standing in the world while erosion of our freedom. This is the most important reason why the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act enjoys the broad support of Hong Kong civil society. Lam finally withdrew the bill earlier this month, but just as protesters have long stopped calling for her resignation, this decision was almost meaningless by now. The movement is far from over because it has long moved beyond one bill or one person. Our most important demand is genuine structural change in Hong Kong, which means free election. Our government's lack of representation lies at the heart of the matter. As I speak, Hong Kong is standing at a critical juncture. The stakes have never been higher. We are confronted by the huge Chinese military build-up just across the border in Shenzhen. President Xi Jinping is unlikely to take hardline action before the upcoming National Day in October.
我认为习近平在10月1日之前不可能采取太过强硬的政策，可是我不知道接下来会发生什么。
With Chinese interference in Taiwan, Tibet, and especially
中共
Xinjiang,
对于台
it
湾、
serves
新
as a
疆、
reminder
西
that
藏的打压，
Beijing is prepared to go far in pursuit of its grand
都提
imperial
醒着我
project.
们
I was
北
once
京
the
的
face of Hong Kong's youth activism. In this leaderless movement, my
我曾
sacrifices
经
are minimals compared to those
我曾
among
经
us
是
who have
香
been
港
laid off
抗
of protesting,
争运动的领导人，可
who
是
have been
这一次
injured
的
but too afraid of
这一次
even
的抗
going
争是
to a
没有领导
hospital,
人的。
or who have been forced to take their
我
own
我
life,
做出的
to have
贡
each
献
lost
非常的
an
小。
eyes. The youngest of the 1,500 arrested so far is only 12 years old
500
schoolboy.
名
I
被
don't know them
关押
personally.
的被
Yes, that
警
pain
察关
is
押
my
的
pain.
抗争者中
We
最小
belong
的
to
一
the
位才
same
12岁
community,。struggling for our right of self-determination, so we can
我
build
只是
one
这个
greater
集体中的一
and
部
common
分。
future. A child born
一起
today
为我
will
们的
not
未来
even
抗
have
争。
celebrate his or her 28th birthday by 2047, when the 50 years unchanged policy is set to expire. That deadline is closer to us than it appears. There's no return for us. Decades from now, when historians look back, I'm sure that
并没有
2019
我们
will
没有
turn
第二个
out
选
to
择。
have been a watershed. I hope historians will celebrate the United States Congress for having stood on the side of Hong Kongers,
我希
the
望
side
以后
of
的
human
历
rights
史学
and
家们
democracy.
能
God
够
bless Hong Kong. Thank you.
能够，我希望以后的历史学家们能够去赞扬美国国会在这样一个历史时刻，选择站在
Ms. Ho,
香港的一
welcome.
方，对香港的保护。
Thank you, Chairman McGovern, Co-Chairman Rubio, and the members of this commission for holding this hearing and for having
感
us
谢
here
你
at this
们
very critical
开
moment
展
for
这
Hong Kong.
个听会，尤其是在
For more
香
than
港这样
100
一
days
个
now, young
危急
people
的
in
时
Hong
刻
Kong，have been at the forefront of our resistance. This is a leaderless movement with
这是一个没有
widespread
领导
participation
人、
from
没有
people
领导
of
者的
all
运
walks
动，
of life. It
来
is a
自
fight
社
for
会各界
democracy,
的
a
人都
fight
在
for
参
human
加
rights, and
这
most
场
of all,
抗
a fight
争。
for universal
他们
values. What
在
started
为
in
普世
June
价
as
值
a
而
1 million
抗
people
争，在为
march
民
has
主而抗
morphed
争。
into a struggle for fundamental political reform in Hong Kong.
我们
Chief
希望香
Executive
港
Carrie
能够
Lam's misjudgments and arrogance
对警察
worsened the situation,
暴力进行彻底的
resulting in
调查，
a
对
total
警察
clampdown
进行
of
彻
the
底的改
Beijing
革。
government over Hong Kong's affairs. To date, more than 1,500 Hong Kongers, the youngest at the age of 12 years old, have been unreasonably
到现
arrested.
在为止，
Sadly, it
有
has
500
become a
名
daily
抗争
occurrence
者
to
被
see
拘捕，
youngsters being pinned
最
to
小
the
的才
ground
12
with
岁，
head concussions if not
小
being
孩
knocked
子被
unconscious.
压到地上。
On the other hand, riot police
甚
and
至会引
plainclothes
起脑震
officers
荡
have
这样
since
的
early on
危害。
deliberately hidden their ID numbers and warrant cards, making it
警察
impossible for us to even certify their legitimacy,
警
let
察
alone hold
并
them
不出
accountable.
示他们的
On August
警员证，
21st,
然后藏起
police
来他
from the
们警员证
Special
上的
Tactical
身份
Unit
证、
charged
警员证
into
号
Prince
码，
Edward
让
MTR
我们无法
Station,
去
beating
追
up
究他们的责
passengers
任。
randomly. They then shut down the station for 24 hours, refusing
他们
medical care for those who were
这些
injured,
警察他们
raising
关
even
闭地铁
suspicions
站
of possible deaths
拒
in the
绝
station.
给那些受伤的抗争者
Separately
进
now,
行
they will be
拒绝让
charging
受伤
in
的抗争者
secondary
进
school
行
yards, shopping
治
malls,
疗
and。buses, where young people merely dressed in black can be searched or even arrested without
在
justification.
公共交通
In other
上，一
words,
些年轻人
merely
只是因为
being
穿了
young
黑色的
is a
衣服
crime
就要
in
被
the police
就要
state
被
of
搜
Hong
就要
Kong.
被警察搜身。
The protests began with an extradition bill, but at the core, it has always been
这
about
场
these
运动
fundamental
最开始是
conflicts
由
between two very
反
different sets
逃
of
犯条
values.
例
On one hand, the
引
China
起的，可
model,
是它的
which
最
has
终
no
原因是
respect
两种不
over
同价
human
值观
rights
的
and the rule of law,
冲突。
and our hybrid
一
city
方
that has enjoyed these very freedoms for the most of its existence,
由
with a
法
deep
治
attachment to these universal values that the United States and other Western societies
我
treasure.
们相信这一点也是
Hong
美
Kong
国和
represents
这
something
种普世的
unique
价
in
值，
the
也
world.
是美国和
We
其
have
他
long
西方国
held
家
dear our rule of law,
所珍视的价值。
transparent institutions, and the freedom of expression in a part of the world where these are most often threatened than upheld.
我们的言论自由
However,
也在
this
受到
system
威
is
胁。
now under great threat. companies like Hong Kong's major airline Cathay Pacific has succumbed to political pressure, firing dozens of employees due to their political stance. The business community is coerced into making political decisions. As a singer and activist from Hong Kong, I have experienced the suppression firsthand. Ever since the umbrella movement in 2014, I have been blacklisted by the Communist government. My songs and my name are censored on Chinese internet. Pressured by the Chinese government, sponsors have pulled out, even international brands have kept their distances. For the past 5 years and even more so recently, China tried to smear and silence me with their propaganda machines spreading false claims. Right now, I am facing threats from pro-Beijing supporters and could face arrest and prosecution at any time. Not only have I faced difficulties in both China and Hong Kong, but the self-censorship has now spread towards global institutions and cities. Recently, the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, Australia, denied a venue to an event of Chinese artist Ba Liu Cao and myself due to security concerns. Celebrities from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China are all pressured into voicing their unanimous support for the Beijing government and could be condemned for keeping their silence. Hong Kongers are now living in a constant fear and have unfortunately lost most of our freedoms. For a city that has been famously known as politically indifferent, the younger generations have took up the role to safeguard our home, standing up courageously to the corrupted system in spite of increased suppression. To the rest of the world, the United States is often a symbol of freedom and democracy. The freedom Americans enjoy is something that the people of Hong Kong have long hoped for. Even though our languages and cultures differ, what we have in common is the pursuit for justice, freedom, and democracy. Through the challenges of Hong Kong, the West is also waking up to China's insinuating power in a global scale. Hong Kong is connected to the world in multiple ways, but China is trying to isolate it to exert control. If Hong Kong falls, it would easily become the springboard for the totalitarian regime of China to push its rules and priorities overseas, utilizing its economic powers to conform others to their communist values, just as they have done with Hong Kong in the past 22 years. The U.S. and its allies have everything to fear if they wish to maintain a world that is free, open, and civil. I therefore urge the U.S. Congress to stand by Hong Kong and most of all to pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. This is not a plea for the so-called foreign interference. This is a plea for democracy. This is a plea for the freedom to choose. And lastly, I would like to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, your most beloved First Lady. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. This is a global fight for the universal values that we all cherish. And Hong Kong is in the very front lines of this fight. We are once fearful of what might have come with our silence. And for that, we have now become fearless. Thank you.
因为这一点，我们才能够更加有勇气。
Mr. Zhang, welcome.
Chairman McGovern, Co-Chairman Rubio, and members of the committee, thank you for your invitation to this hearing. Last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping said in a closed door meeting that China would never embrace the judicial independence in the West. This is why people in Hong Kong are trying hard to reject the extradition bill because we do not believe in a country who looks down on human rights, disqualifying our legislators, and kidnapping our booksellers. We want to protect our legal system as the last barrier against Beijing's political interference. Apart from asking for the withdrawal of the bill, Hong Kong people also demand for an investigation into police brutality to save Hong Kong from turning into a police state. More importantly, we demand for the universal suffrage. We deeply believe that without any structural political reform and a government chosen by the people, there is no possibility for Hong Kong to restore prosperity. We cannot have a society compromising the interests of individuals. The voice of these people should always be heard. Unfortunately, our government ignores our demands by saying that we have no stake in the society. Our student union members are detained, followed, beaten, and threatened. During the detainment, one of our student union members were told by the police that it was reasonable for them to rape some female protesters when they frequently work overtime. Besides, the authority tries to stop us from having peaceful class strike when more than 50,000 students participating in it. People who side with Beijing are now advocating to install surveillance cameras inside the classroom to monitor teachers and students who dare to support class strike and support the movement. This apparently violates our academic freedom and freedom of speech. This is the right terror created by the Beijing government, which should be alerted by all people here. Nowadays, students and Hong Kong people are even ready to die for Hong Kong, and some already did. They believe that the only limit to their freedom is their death. This is the ultimate sacrifice for the motherland, and we must not forget them. Many students face strong objection from their family. Some of them are even forced to leave home. But they still choose to head to the front line, carrying a letter with their last will. They are determined. They understand that the price of freedom is high. It always has been. But it is a price they are willing to pay, and it is a path of liberation they are willing to choose. We do not fight for freedom out of passion. Passion will burn out. We fight for freedom from a sense of duty and dignity. China is rising. China is using its nationalism and invasive economic dominance to colonize small countries and put intense pressure on people and companies like Cathay Pacific who do not conform to them. Teachers, students, civil servants, businessmen are all facing political purge in Hong Kong. This new form of imperialism of China poses a severe threat to Hong Kong. This is a clash of values and system. We need to contain the Communist Party of China. Offering help to Hong Kong is the primary move to contain China. One country, two system will expire in 2047. U.S. government should help Hong Kong people have the right to decide our future. Therefore, we urge the U.S. Congress to pass the Human Rights and Democracy Act to expand the current sanction list to all individuals who infringe our human rights. Moreover, if a genuine universal suffrage cannot be achieved immediately, our autonomy and rule of law will continue to erode. The situation of China manipulating Hong Kong as a backdoor for trading with Iran and North Korea will also continue. Then, the U.S. government should not acknowledge the special status of Hong Kong. U.S. must send a strong signal that this special status should be cancelled if Hong Kong lost its autonomy in order to put pressure on China.
香港的自治受到破坏，那么这样的贸易优惠待遇应该被取消。
With such an assertive policy, it demonstrates that America will no longer tolerate totalitarianism.
这样强硬的政策可以表示出美国对于人权迫害的不容忍。
As Thomas Jefferson once said that he would be forever against any form of tyranny, and I believe this is the time.
他反对任何形式的暴政。我认为这是美国为香港站出来的非常好的一个时机。
Ms. Holm, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman McGovern, Co-Chair Rubio, and members of the Commission. Thank you for this opportunity. It's an honor for me to stand in solidarity with the frontline activists. I want to thank the Commission members for their critical support.
能够和香港的抗争者站在一起，我感觉十分的荣幸。我希望国会能够通过《香港人权民主法案》与保护香港法案。香港人站在了北京这一个强大政权的面前。他们为了人类的尊严而抗争，其实是站在了世界的前线。By the Hong Kong people against Beijing's encroachment on Hong Kong's autonomy, rights, and freedom. The mass demonstrations in the past have included resistance against
security legislation, official brainwashing initiatives, and the
过
gutting
去
of the promised
几
genuine
年的
universal suffrage.
过去几年来，香港人一直在为他们的民主自由而抗争，包括他们反洗脑教育的运动。
A promise inscribed on the concrete sidewalks. We will return. They have kept that promise. Instead of Beijing's hope for movement fatigue, the protests supported
尽
by
管北
unflagging
京希望运
solidarity
动
and broad diverse
由于渐渐
participation
的
of
疲
Hong
劳
Kong
而
society
渐
are
渐
moving
自行
into
消
the
失。
15th week, pressing
可
for
是
now
香港的
5
抗争到现
non-negotiable
在
demands.
一直都没有停
The
止。
out-of-control, lawless actions of the Hong Kong police have provided mobilization fuel for Hong Kong people to add oil. As Chairman Mao said, wherever there is suppression, there will be resistance. And at the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, he also said, anyone who crushes the student movement will not have a good ending. I want to talk about the rule of law just briefly because there are tensions that were baked
我想
into the
讨
one
论
country
一
two
下
systems
香港的
framework,
法治问
making one
题。
country, one system, or one and a half system, perhaps an inevitable outcome. Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen's takeaway from the current political crisis hits the nail on the head. Not only is one country, two systems not a viable model for Taiwan, but the
香港
Hong Kong example
台湾的
proves
总统蔡
that
英文曾经说
dictatorship and democracy cannot
一国
coexist.
两制
An independent functioning rule of law is essential, yet the Chinese state constitution and numerous high-level policy pronouncements legitimizes the subordination of law to the leadership of the party. The reintroduction of the Article 23 legislation that's in the works in Hong Kong will inevitably carry imprints of the party's concepts of national security. Second, the demand for complete loyalty to the party guts the independence of key pillars of rule of law, legal profession, and the media. But Hong Kong is not the mainland yet. Despite efforts
香
like
港
proposed Hong Kong
北京当
national
局要求
anthem
香
law
港
and
人
proposed
对
loyalty requirements,
共产党忠诚，
loyalty,
可是香
pride,
港
and
并
love
不是
cannot
中
be
国大陆。
legislated. So it's not surprising that Hong Kong people, foreign business, and the international community have been alarmed. The outrageous and painful excessive violence and abuse of law by the police have already been extensively described.
过去对法治的这种破坏已经
talking about what's at
得到了
stake in terms
很
of
清晰
the
的描
universal
述。
values. China's aggressive activism at the UN is undermining international standards,
中共
weakening
在
the existing
联
human
合
rights
国的这
mechanisms,
种行
and
为确
restricting
实
the
是对
participation of independent
人
civil
权的一种
society.
激烈的
This
破
cuts Hong
坏。
Kong people as well as human rights defenders on the mainland and Tibetan and Uyghur communities from the key international platforms that's available to press for accountability. With this, instead of the West's hope for convergence, China is not only playing by the rules, it is vocally and persistently asserting a set of relativist
西
criteria
方希
that
望
it
中共
alone
能够逐
can
渐的
apply and
改革，
pushing
可
for
是他们
Chinese models
并没有
of
这样
human rights,
做，而
democracy,
是
and development.
试
That is
图
no
将
human
中
rights,
国的
no
模式
development, and no democracy.
推向海外。
This rhetoric helps to intimidate, silence, and deflect from the accountability of the state. I want to point quickly to its role in blocking independent voices. China sits on the ECOSOC committee of
我
the
想试图表达一
UN,
下中共对于
and
独立声音的
who do
压
not face any
迫。
objections, such as the interruptions of Denise Ho's recent
例
intervention
如，
at the
他
Human
们
Rights Council.
在联合
The
国大
intervention
会
last week
上
by Patsy Ho,
多
the
次打
representative of the
断
Hong Kong
何韵诗的
Federation
发
of Women,
言。
is illustrative. She not only defended the SAR government's handling of the protests, but she accused the Hong Kong protesters of child exploitation and more. Patsy Ho, co-chairman and director of Macau casino operation, and is also a standing committee member of the Beijing Municipal Committee of the Chinese People's Consultative Conference. Because I am out of time, I want to really take the time to jump ahead to the problem of in addition to the disinformation campaign, including the egregious use by the China Daily on 9/11 of a photo depicting the destruction of the World Trade Towers to warn of terrorist attacks by Hong Kong protesters.
在911
Beijing
的
is
时候，
advancing a narrative of violence to frame the Hong Kong protests that is
以
echoed
911世贸大
uncritically by
楼
the
的
international
照
community.
片来
Within this framework, the
警
Hong
告
Kong
世
police
界，香
protected in
港
full tactical gear
香港抗争者的恐怖主义行为，可是这是利用假新闻在进行信息战。
Clashes with civilian protesters. Hence, we hear both sides calls to de-escalate, but this deflects attention away from police accountability for its excessive use of force.
政府和抗争者双方都希望能够
the narrow violence framing of the situation on the ground is erasing or marginalizing intentionally the proliferation of diverse, creative, and peaceful protests by the Hong Kong people, including by students in boycotts, elderly citizens, silver-hair volunteers protecting the children.
香港的银发族也上，香港的一些年纪比较大的人也上街抗争，支持学生逃犯条例。
And forming human chains, creating Lenin walls. And last Friday was Mid-Autumn Festival, and a small family-owned bakery in Saiwan made mooncakes with protest slogans.
通过做带有
Hong Kongers are creating art.
抗争口号的月饼，形成人链等各种各样以及建立联农墙各种各样有创意的方式表达他们的诉求。香港人。
Thank you again, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Garrett, thank you for coming, and we welcome your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman McGovern and Rubio, distinguished members of the Commission. It is an honor and a privilege to talk with you regarding the Chinese Communist Party's erosion of one country, two systems in Hong Kong under the pretext of national security and its nexus to the extradition bill crisis. I'll begin with 5 key observations background the current China-Hong Kong conflict and the one country, two systems crisis. First, today's one country, two systems is not the same as Deng Xiaoping's notion that proper peaceful coexistence between the communists and Hong Kong systems. Instead, it has been replaced by Xi Jinping's new era one country, two systems model, embracing political struggle and enemy-friend binary, and foregrounding Chinese national security as the paramount lens for governing the special administrative region and implementing one country, two systems. Rather than a confidence-building mechanism ensuring peaceful coexistence, one country, two systems under Xi Jinping is now intended to advance and safeguard China's sovereignty, security, and development
习近平统治下的一国两制已经变成了保证中共的权威和他们对香港的统治。
known as the 3 major dangers in national security with Chinese characteristics. The former situates communist China at imminent risk of being invaded, toppled, and separated, and its development, reform, and stability sabotaged, thereby leading to the derailing of China's rise, socialist modernization, and the one country, two systems policy. The latter dramatically broadens the notion of Chinese national security and radically expands the scope of Chinese authorities' prerogatives in administering one country, two systems. Consequently, it significantly erodes the special administrative region's high degree of autonomy, diminishes Hong Kongers' freedoms, and widens the threat to U.S. citizens and national interests in Hong Kong. Third, under Xi Jinping's new security paradigms and new era one country, two systems model, dissident Hong Kongers have been systematically enemified and securitized as mortal
在习近平的一国两制下，香港的抗争者被推到了对立面。
Hong Kongers disenfranchised and terrorized with real and rhetorical political violence. The promise of Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong has been effectively replaced with the tyrannical role of patriots. Official declarations and party-state media propagating Hong Konger enemy and Hong Kong threat security discourses have become ubiquitous, and cultural revolution like mass line and United Front denunciation campaigns targeting Democrats, localists, westernized Hong Kongers have swept the city repeatedly.
发动一场像文化大革命一样的运动，来针对支持香港的人。
Since 2012, Hong Kong and one country, two systems have been perceived by Beijing as communist China's weakest links in its resurgent totalitarian national security state. For Chinese authorities, both are at the forefront of ideological confrontation with the United States and the West, a new Cold War in their terms. By the end of 2014 and the Umbrella Movement, the struggle to rule Hong Kong was said to have matched the intensity surrounding the 1997 handover and that China had to now rethink how to rule the enclave. An influential advisor to senior Chinese authorities said that Hong Kong faced a society-wide, quote-unquote, long-term struggle to eradicate the party-state's enemies in the city, a de facto cultural revolution that would involve, at a minimum, rectifying and synthesizing the judiciary, legislature, media, secondary schools, and universities. Chinese and special administrative regions' furtive efforts to impose the communist legal, political, and social norms on Hong Kong via the extradition law and
中共
unprecedented
试图通过逃犯条例将中国的这种模式输出到香港。
as Hong Kongers fight for their endangered freedoms, identity, and way of life. This is not an anomaly. It is the 6th Chinese governance crisis involving one country, two systems since 2003.
这已经是2003年以来第6次中共面对的香港人的反抗。
its so-called comprehensive jurisdiction in Hong Kong, and to roll back Hong Kongers' high degree of autonomy, liberal freedoms, and limited democracy by forcibly transforming Hong Kong into a Chinese communist city while maintaining a veneer of no changes.
他们试图将香港变成一个共产党统治下的城市。
Senior Chinese officials have described the battle, the extradition battle right now, as a quote-unquote battle of life and death, and as a battle to
中共
defend
的
Hong
高级
Kong.
官员将这个反修例运动形容为生死之战。
Since Xi Jinping came to power, national security is now a mandatory obligation for people in the Hong Kong SAR. This was never written in the original basic law. This has been done post facto since 2012.
从习近平当局以来，国家安全问题已经成为中共驻港办公室的一个重要的议程。
Han Zhong and Wang Yang, the head of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Zhang Xiaoming, and the chief of the Hong Kong SAR Liaison Office, Wang Zhemin. There are also indications that President Xi Jinping, as a member of the Central Coordination Group for Hong Kong and Macau Affairs, has weighed in. An influential United Front commentator and state media has also observed that if it were not for the full support of the central government, the legislation would have been aborted. Chief Executive Carrie Lam recently lamented in a leaked speech that since the issue had been elevated to one of national security and sovereignty, it had stripped her of any solutions or room for political maneuver. Another source explained that because the ELAB involved the mainland special administrative region relationship with the central government and the implementation of the basic law, it was not a matter entirely within the autonomy of the special administrative region government. This touches upon the Hong Kongers' 5 demands as well as U.S. national security, U.S. policy towards Hong Kong. Beijing's imposition of communist, legal, political, and social national security norms on Hong Kong constitute a violation of Article 5 of the Basic Law, prohibiting the introduction of the socialist system in the territory. Moreover, the party's application of its national security and Chinese characteristics mandate and loyalty expectations to the special administrative region and its civil servants effectively dissolves any difference between the communist and Hong Kong systems, thereby posing a significant threat to U.S. interests related to the protection of sensitive technologies and adherence to export controls. My last 2 comments before I submit the rest of my testimony. The Hong Kong police force has been militarized and nationalized by the Chinese Communist Party,
香港
effectively
的
becoming its little
警
gun
察
in the
在
special
中共统
administrative
治
region.
下
Since
已
the
经
beginning
军
of
队化了。
2019, mainland police have been tasked by President Xi with, quote-unquote, preventing and countering color revolutions, unquote. China's public security minister subsequently ordered police to firmly, quote, firmly fight to protect China's political security, unquote, defend its national security and the leadership of the Communist Party. Earlier, Hong Kong police had received similar national security tasking from Vice Premier Han Zheng, who, in August 2018, charged them to, quote-unquote, firmly and effectively safeguard China's national security and rule of law by accurately and comprehensively implementing one country, two systems. Also, according to a vice chairman of the State Council's Chinese Association of Hong Kong and Macau Studies, the Hong Kong police were now, quote-unquote, on the forefront when it came to curbing Hong Kong independence, which meant their duty was not just to maintain public order, but to defend national security too. Chinese
香港警察的责任现在已经不仅仅是维护公共安全，而是去维护国家安全。
In no small way, the Hong Kong police have become the special administrative region's people's armed police.
香港警察已经变成了中共驻港办公室的警察。
To systematically manipulating and recasting Deng Xiaoping's error content and understandings of the basic law in one country, two systems, to accommodate Xi Jinping's totalitarian national security mandates, logics, and outlook.
The Chinese
Association of Hong Kong Macau Studies Association, a shadowy political warfare-like think tank connected to the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau's Affairs Office, is one of these new subversive vehicles. Concomitantly, a network of party-state constitutional and basic law experts and scholars, some attached to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, Hong Kong Basic Law Committee, have similarly contributed significantly to the erosion of one country, two systems policy, mobilized political violence, and informed the central authorities' understandings of the actual situation in the region. All these united frontiers are key players in the erosion of Hong Kong's freedoms and democracy and enablers of state tyranny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll save my questions to the end. I'm going to yield now to the co-chair, Senator Rubio.
Thank you. And I'll just ask one question because I know members have places to go. I want them to get in on this. But you know, the sort of the key issue before us is autonomy. We go back.
关键的问题是自治。2014年，他们中共拿走了普选权。2016年又取消了一些立法议员的资格。2019年，他们又试图推动这个逃犯条例。我想问，你们现在会如何形容香港的自治情况？
During the last congressional hearing, I strongly aware how one country, two systems eroded to be one country, one and a half system. But the recent political crisis by how Hong Kong and Beijing government turned such a global city into the police state with more violence.
政府正在试图将这个国际城市变成警察城市。我现在想说，一国两制已经彻底的失败。我认为现在也是我们寻求两党支持的最佳时机，支持香港的 自由抗争，这是一个对与错的问题。现在香港人中有非常多的人不敢表达自己的想法，他们担忧政府对 政府对一些公司的压迫，要求他们不要让员工说话。这对于香港的经济来说，经济繁荣来说是非常困难的。 我们现在已经几乎是一个中国城市的感觉，人们不敢表达自己的想法，不敢表达自己的立场。我想举一个例子，最近有一位 不具名的歌手为香港写了一首类似于是香港国歌的感觉。他不具名的原因，就是因为他担心自己会被拘捕。所以我觉得这一点也表现，这个事件也表现了现在在香港的一种状况。去年
concerns that Hong Kong is becoming more likely like any other Chinese city.
美国发出了这样的担忧，就是香港会变成另一个中国城市。 香港的自治正在危险之中。我在面见美国政府的时候，美国政府官员的时候，我会告诉他们，中共已经忽视了中英联国声明，他们已经宣布中英联合声明已经死亡。我希望你们能够通过全球马格尼斯基法案，并呼吁你们的同盟国也通过这样的法案来保护香港。1989年以后，林郑月娥多次开新闻发布会，一直在说我们要恢复经济秩序，可是他却完全不提香港的政治问题。所以我想提，香港的经济并不是在完全的造福于香港人民，而是在造福一些巨富。我认为经济应该是为所有人服务的。
and Xinjiang. What autonomy means is no cultural, no language, no history, no right to believe or practice your faith under the Sinicization of religion.
我们只要看一下新疆和西藏的这种所谓自治，就知道中共的自治的概念是什么了。也就是说，你完全无法去坚持自己的信仰，也完全无法坚持你们的文化。他们只想要你变成中国人。什么样的中国人？是习近平概念中的中国人。可是香港是一个非常复杂的地区，他们有着非常复杂的历史和文化。很多人都还在探讨什么叫香港人。我认为自由就是去能够有权利去定义我到底是谁。我认为中共的这种自治根本就不是自治。
The rule of patriots in Hong Kong basically means that there is no substantive high degree of autonomy. Basically, under Xi Jinping, a democratic centralism is practiced. They may solicit input from the Hong Kong government, but once Beijing makes a decision, the SAR government has to implement it.
香港现在的情况是，他们可以参与政府事务，可是如果北京做出了一个决定，那么他们很多时候也并没有办法。
And they believe that one of the major problems, this goes back to 2007, when Hu Jintao told the Hong Kong government on the 10th anniversary that the SAR government had to create a new generation of Hong Kongers who loved one country, two systems, who loved China.
他们需要去制造这样一个新一代的香港人，这样新一代的一个热爱一国两制、热爱中国的一代香港人。
This also touches on Xi Jinping's Chinese Communist identity politics, which is
这也
attempting
与
to
习近
rehabilitate
平
the spoiled image of the Communist Party and the spoiled image of being a communist. This is why we start seeing laws protecting the national anthem, martyrs and so forth like this.
我们在
So in Hong Kong, which has always been
香港开始看到一
historically
些
anti-communist to a large degree,
保护国
there is this
旗、保
effort
护国
related
歌
to
的
the
法
commission
律。
campaign to eradicate so-called anti-communist sentiment and anti-communist forces.
他们试图
With regards to autonomy,
消除一切
Belt and Road
反共的
and the Greater Bay Area initiatives are
行
key
为
to
和
China's development program
情
right now,
绪。
and because the central government believes that the major impediment to Hong Kong signing on and strongly supporting these programs has been the two systems, has been its democracy, has been its freedoms. It is now looking to restrict those in order to force the SAR government to support these programs. So once again, in closing, I would say there is no substantive autonomy. Thank you.
我认为在香港现在并没有实质的自治。
Thank you, Mr. Swazi.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Rubio, for holding this hearing. We appreciate you bringing this together. Thank you, Chairman Representative Smith, Ranking Member Smith, for the work that you've done on this issue for so many years. Thank you to the witnesses. We are so grateful to all of you for the information you've given us here today and for shining a light on this. I know we sit here in this chamber. It's very calm. It's very safe. It's very sterile. And you bring to life what's going on in real people's lives right now. When you talk about a 12-year-old being arrested, we hear the idea that someone gets pepper spray.
在香港究竟发生着什么？如12岁的抗争者被拘捕，然后警察向已经受伤的抗争者的伤口上喷胡椒喷雾，这样的事情。从尼克森访华开始，我们一直以为我们通过和中共的这种交流，能让他们逐渐的认同我们的价值。可是，我们现在举办关于新疆、西藏、香港的听证，我们说香港是一国两制。也就是说，有两种不同的模式。那么，香港究竟会走向哪一个模式？到底是像美国一样有法治、有自由，还是说走向一个专制和集权的这样一个模式？你们现在正站在这个挑战的正中间。我想讨论一下时间的问题、时机的问题。我想，黄之锋，你谈到10月1日中共的这个。我想问你。当香港的选举11月就要开始了，我想了解一下，你们是否相信在这里会有一个机会，让香港人去表达他们的诉求？还是说中共有可能会，中共可能会反对一些香港的民主派议员选举，阻挠一些香港的民主派议员选举。
Mainland China said, we're going to support the idea of there being elections in the future in Hong Kong for the leader, instead of Carrie Lam being appointed, it'd be an election by the people. That couldn't happen right away. It would take some time. I'd like to hear what you think about the timing. So let's try.
有些人在说香港可能以后会有民主自由，可是这需要一些时间。你们怎么看这样的一种说法？
How impactful that can be, and what the timing would be if they were to agree as one of the 5 demands that there would be.
你们认为他们什么时候会同意你们的5大诉求？
Apart from troops were already moved to the border a few weeks ago. That's the tactics for Beijing authorities to generate the chilling effect. We're strongly aware of how Carrie Lam, the leader of Hong Kong, openly declared that she is considering to impose emergency ordinance in Hong Kong to stop the protests.
然后港府也在考虑是否要对香港实行紧急法。那么林郑月娥在这样的紧急法下，她可以关闭公共交通，她可以关掉网络。
But they just conduct and consider to use this kind of martial law before or after the Chinese National Day. I think that's the reason not only people defense on human rights must care about, even businessmen that focus on enjoying economic freedom and open business environment. They should be aware of how Hong Kong is on the brink of bloodshed. It's also under the threat
他们的利益也将在这样的紧急法下受到侵害。所以，我希望美国国会尽快通过《香港人权与民主法案》。香港的选举将在11月24号举行。我们认为北京将继续采用比较强硬的政策，禁止一些年轻的泛民主派议员进行选举。
And at the same time, I'm also will make certain announcement in the late September or early October for myself will run for office on the district council or not. If Beijing government bans me to run for office, they needs to pay the price on Hong Kong protests and also
公布我自己是否会考虑参加选举。
So in Hong Kong, there are many pan-democrats and many pro-Beijing folks. Is there a chance that could change? That dynamic could change because of the protests that are going on?
In district council, we have 452 seats, and more than 75% of the seats are almost dominated by pro-Beijing camp. And on 24th of November, we hope pro-democratic camp can get a good turnout to show the power of people.
今年的选举，泛民主派能够获得比较大的胜利，来表达民众的诉求。
And what is happening from the people, and it could be a flashpoint. We have to be very conscious of that. Denise, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, personally, I don't feel that October 1st would be something to stop the people from going on to the streets, as the sentiment is still very, very determined and very strong.
我并不认为10月1号这种中共的国庆日会停止，会令香港人停止走上街头。香港人的抗争已经变得越来越有创意，越来越灵活。我们希望。 除非港府能够诚恳的、真正的给我们一个答案，香港的抗争者是不会离开、不会退却的。
I don't think, no, personally, I feel that there are probably already Chinese police among the Hong Kong police.
现在我个人认为，香港的警察队伍中已经有了中共的警察。 因为我们已经听到他们在他们的他们之间开始讲普通话，而不是粤语。
Sort of infiltration of the Chinese police into the Hong Kong police force. So,
are you concerned about it escalating around National Day?
你担心10月1号这种抗争的程度？ 或者冲突的程度会加剧吗？我每天都在担心这种冲突的加剧。警察每天都在巡逻大街，很多年轻人被捕，只是因为他们很年轻，看起来像是抗争者。 所以，我们也希望国际社会能够密切地关注这个政权、这个习近平政权的做法。我们在保护我们所相信的这些价值、这些普世价值。
Thank you, Sunny.
Yes. Thank you for your question. Personally, I think on the National Day, actually, there will be more escalation on the movement, and because I know that the Chinese authority must want the Hong Kong people try to respect the National Day, but on the other hand, Hong Kong protesters, they also know that it's important to have some symbolic movement on the National Day, and that's why there will be some escalation of the movement. But if the Chinese government they dare to use the emergency law or send out the PLA to come to Hong Kong, because currently China relies on Hong Kong very much. Many foreign investment
认为现在中共非常的依赖香港，很多的外国投资是从香港进入的。如果他们试图动用紧急法来镇压香港的抗争的话，我认为北京当局不会这样做，不会采用军队镇压的做法。
I think a couple of things I want is really important that hasn't been raised. In addition to the question of infiltration and use of decoys, last August 2018, the People's Daily announced the establishment of the Greater Bay Area Police Cooperation Mechanism among Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau.
中共宣布了这样一种香港、广东和澳门警察的一种合作。
Hong Kong police personnel in Guangdong. This has been followed up on. And one of the questions I think is important to press either through the UN systems is to raise the question of really what kind of training. I am pretty sure that the training did not include international standards on appropriate use of force.
我认为这样的培训一定不包括如何正确的使用武力。
Special experts just last week issued a joint statement about concern and also raising these questions of the need to make the police, the Hong Kong police, there are very sophisticated, detailed standards on the use of force, that you're supposed to de-escalate, not escalate, you're supposed to reduce harm, not create harm, and that there are a whole range of police crowd control mechanisms, and they're supposed to choose according to proportionality. So I wanted to just emphasize that. On the timing of National Day, I think we can't lose sight of the fact that Xi Jinping is not as powerful as we may think or as he would like us to think, and that it is true that with the consolidation of power, no term limit now both of the key positions. The fact is, what you're getting to see, the tea leaves, if you look a little more closely, is that the party leaders inside are not happy with the way that Xi Jinping has, quote, handled the Hong Kong situation. And how do we know this? We know this because Carrie Lam, the chief executive, on Monday, I believe, said, no withdrawal, no, etc. I withdrew it, no formal. 2 days later, that kind of disingenuous explanation, I have heard the Hong Kong people. For goodness sakes, it's been 3 months. If you can't hear 2 million, 3 million people, so why in 2 days did she suddenly say, I will now formally? So, Xi Jinping is actually in a lose-lose situation. It's a no-win situation. He's stuck between the hardliners, who I am pretty much concerned about, are pushing for military force, because he has already shown he's failed. Deng Xiaoping took 2 months. Shut down the whole 89 student and the democracy and free trade union movement. We are now in the 3rd month, so under the party's dead time frame on how you can handle these mass disputes, he has failed. So he's in a pretty situation. October 1st. This is not any anniversary. This is the 70th anniversary. So they have invested years worth of enormous investment in film festival, special documentaries made. They have said that no Chinese documentaries in the Chinese TV recently. They have to show the history, etc. There's an enormous amount of investment to keep the legitimacy and have a wonderful birthday celebration for the country. So he's stuck.
通过这种巨大的投资来证明其政权的合法性。
And the others who are saying, there's got to be a way to handle this, not the way you're doing it, because now we look terrible. Now we look like the thugs we are. And so I think that is what we should be monitoring are the messages. And just last week, a very strange editorial appeared in Xiushu, which is one of the major party organs. And in Xiushu, the editorial pointed out something very strange. It said, whether a country's political, this is our translation, sorry, whether a country's political system is democratic and effective, one needs to mainly look at whether the country's leadership ranks can rotate or alternate, BNT, in accordance with the law in an orderly fashion. What does this mean? We don't know, because just the fact that the Constitution eliminated the term limits for the top office doesn't mean he'll stay. So I think there are some other wild cards that are on the table that we need to keep an eye on in terms of how the US government can think about the options and policy options. Of course, we support the legislative initiatives. This is very important, but I think there's something much bigger underway in
我
terms of
当
the
然支
politics in
持这些
Beijing
法
that
案，
will
可是我觉
absolutely
得
have an impact on the
北
decisions
京
that will be
有一些
made
更深层的原
pre-October
因，
1st and after.
非常的值得我们
Thank you.
的
Dan, I've taken
探
up too
究
much。time. I'm going to move on to.
We'll let Dan.
You want to let Dan go?
All right. Why don't we hold and we'll go to Senator Young.
I just have a statement to make, and I regret I'm going to have to leave after this, but I wanted to say thank you, Mr. Wong. Thank you, Ms. Ho, for your courage, for your resolve, for your leadership in the face of a great trial and tribulation. Thank you for the example you are setting for the world and for all that you're doing for freedom-loving peoples. I want to send a message to Beijing's communists. And my message is, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot seek to trade with the wealthy nations of the world and rip off our intellectual property. You cannot seek to be a trusted international development partner and engage in predatory economic practices through your Belt and Road Initiative. And you cannot reap all the economic benefits that you enjoy under American law of Hong Kong's special status
不能利用美国法律对于给予香港的这种优惠待遇，同时又在香港实施这样的政治镇压。我想说，我会支持这两个法案，同时我也会在比如说移民方案，看如何能够更好的帮助香港人，去帮助那些不想成为这个专制政权体制下的人的香港，我想去帮助这些香港人。我们需要继续坚持让中共改变他们的做法。
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is no disputing the fact that under Xi Jinping, human rights abuses have seriously worsened. You named the area of torture, religious freedom. This home you talked about the civilization of religions where every single religion or faith, including the Falun Gong, Christians, Tibetan Buddhists, the Uyghurs, all have to comport to the communist model or else face severe torture, incarceration, and even death. It is incredible what he is doing and his regime, and of course all of that will be imposed on Hong Kong unless there is a reversal of this trend. On human trafficking, the Trump administration has designated China as a Tier 3 country. Because of sex and labor trafficking, it has gotten seriously worse over the last several years. So every place you look, it is worse. Xi Jinping is bringing dishonor to himself and to his government with his abuse of people. And I think we need to say that loud and clear. You know, the great father of democracy, Wei Jingsheng, once said, and I had him at a hearing, and I actually met him in Beijing when he was let out briefly to get Olympics 2000, which the Chinese government didn't get. So they rearrested him and beat him almost senseless. Well, he said, you know, you Westerners don't get it. You do coddle dictatorship. You do allow and enable by your weakness. You gotta look a dictatorship in the eye and say, we're not kidding. Conditionality of human rights either occurs or we're not going to be trading with you and allowing you to use that economic power that you get to further incarcerate and further repress. You know, the lessons of the Soviet Union were not learned when it came to China. I got elected in 1981. My first trip was to Moscow and Leningrad on behalf of Soviet Jews. And frankly, the Reagan administration stood up strongly and said human rights matter.
人权是非常重要的。
Thankfully, we saw a change. Of course, under Putin, it's still bad, but not as bad as it was during those years.
尽管俄罗斯现在在 普京的统治下，人权非常的状况非常不好，可是也不像在苏联时期那样。可是我们在中国这个问题上，我们没有学到我们的教训。
Not only did I vote for it, but we had a world coalition saying this egregious behavior will not be tolerated. Therefore, we're going to
我们需要停止向中共或者是港府提供武器。
And Mr. Garrett, you might want to speak to that. But we've got to be serious about all of this. And I just bring this up because it deeply concerns me that we just keep not learning the lessons. Nancy Pelosi, Frank Wolf, David Bonner, and I all opposed MFN for China after Tiananmen Square. George Herbert Walker Bush thought he could manage the whole thing. He was our ambassador to China. And as it turned out, we managed it.
军队镇压学生的时候，我们就想对中共采取强硬的政策。可是当时的总统布什并不这样想。现在我已经5年来，我一直在不停的努力，试图通过这场法律。然后还是有人说，我们只是需要与中共进行更多的贸易往来，他们的人权状况会自然的就变好。可是香港已经失去了，香港人已经付出了如此大的代价，失去了。逐渐的失去他们的自由。
We're going to put conditionality on this. So if you want to speak to that, I would appreciate it. There have been 1,000 arrests since the activities occurred.
从运动开始，已经有1000多人被抓捕。我想了解一下现在他们的现状是如何的。这些警察他们是刚刚被雇佣的吗？他们是更加亲共的吗？所以他们才会变得这样更加具有压迫性吗？
With more than 1,500 Hong Kong were arrested in the past 3 months. More than 200 of them were prosecuted already. I'm among one of them, and we're also aware of some of those activists were already detained inside prison before any trial start. And that's the sugar-coated rule of law and the Hong Kong-style legal system under the pressure of Beijing. I've been arrested and prosecuted with the charges of unauthorized assembly. Even I've experienced to be jailed for around 120 days. But the price I pay is just a small piece of cake. Because lots of our teammates, from my understanding, more than 100 of them face the riot charges, might be locked up in prison for more than 10 years. 5 years ago, during the umbrella movement, we were just arrested by an unlawful assembly to face maybe months or 1 to 2 years in jail. But now, youngsters at the age of 15, they should enjoy their summer holiday.
现在15岁左右这些年轻人本来应该去享受他们的暑假，去和家人和朋友在一起，可是他们现在却在被政府起诉，甚至将面临在这样一个黄金的年龄，将要面临监禁这样的危险。同时，我们也有一些抗议人士。
Apart from the massive
6年的监禁
arrest and prosecution, it seems to be the tactics for Beijing to silence our voice. But with how our movement still keep our momentum, just like 2 weeks ago, more than 200,000 Hong Kongers marched towards U.S. consulates in Hong Kong urged to pass the bill and to show the global solidarity. We're also aware that the cabinet of chief executive, which means member from the executive council, last week openly declared that Hong Kong's chief executive enjoyed the right to appoint any secret police. Secret police is not the terms created by activists or created by journalists. Is the terms written in the current ordinance and regulation. It could authorize the power for Hong Kong chief executive to appoint anyone, no matter they live in Hong Kong, they live in mainland, or live in or they have any kind of background. They can be appointed to be the Hong Kong police force and continue to use life-threatening force to crack down on our protests. And that's the white terror, and why all of us will describe Hong Kong as a police state.
现在的白色恐怖统治。
I would like to add to the fact that among those who have been arrested and charged for riot, a lot of them
暴动罪被起诉或被拘捕的一些人，很多人他们根本就不是站在前线的这些人，他们只是恰巧站在附近。有一些是急救人员，有一些是在帮助人、帮助抗争者的人，有一些是社工。他们所以这种是对香港人来说，对这种港府的做法非常的震惊。我还想说，香港的形势正在扩展到世界各地。中共这种通过钱、通过晋升来压迫反抗声音的做法，已经输出到了全世界。比如说，在澳洲，如一个政府机构，他们试图防止我试图断绝与我的联系。如在加拿大，香港的一位活动者也被禁止参加一个游行。他们中共试图用钱、用商业来将这种压迫输出到商界，然后输出到雇主的头上，然后雇主再输出到雇员的头上。这也就是为什么我们这场抗争运动，大部分人都是无名的运动，他们不会说出自己的名字，因为不想被以暴动和非法集会的罪名被起诉。我想说
Actually, the Human Rights Council of the United Nations has decried the public order ordinance, which is a colonial law in Hong Kong. The Department of Justice and police force in Hong Kong, they can use this public order ordinance to prosecute those protesters with a very easy way. That means that once if the DOJ, the Department of Justice, or the police force, they try to use the public order ordinance to prosecute the protester, and then actually it's very difficult for them to be not sued as guilty. And that's why this law should be abolished by the government. And we urge that actually the international society should also be aware about this law. And apart from that,
被判无罪，所以我认为这条法律应该被废除。
I had a tutorial kid, and then
我认識一個小朋友，一位年輕人，他在抗爭中被拘捕。
When that kid was arrested, and
當這個年輕人被逮捕的時候，他立刻就向這個警察
call his lawyer, and the police officer.
他很快就問這個警察說：“我可不可以打電話給我的律師？”然後這個警察就告訴他說：“你不可以打電話給你的律師，因為我想要折磨你，因為我想要讓你受苦。”然後這個警察對一個非常非常年輕的年輕人說這樣一句話。這也就是為什麼香港人對警察的行為如此的憤怒，如此的沮喪。
The prosecutions is related to not only the imposition of the public order, but ordinance. It has to be an unlawful assembly. So the way in which the notice of no objection process contributes to that, that's the tool. And the tool is Hong Kongers then face this ridiculous situation where they have to have the police deny the application for a notice of no objection for a file for a peaceful assembly
尽管他们试图进行反抗警方暴力的和平集会，可是警方会拒绝批准这样的集会。
So that's really important that through this kind of misuse of that process, they are really violating international standards for peaceful assembly by imposing this kind of unduly restrictive administrative procedure. The police, under this procedure, then can act rampantly as both enforcement, prosecutor.
所以他们在拒绝批准这样的集会了之后，他们就可以使用武力来驱散人群。
So right now, the police are acting as enforcement, prosecution, and executioner of orders, and that is part of the problem with looking at when we talk about and on top of that, we have politicized decision making by the prosecution. This was also noted by independent UN experts maybe 2 years ago, saying that they were concerned about a potential pattern of politicized
联合国的一些专家在几年前就已经发出这样的
There is an issue regarding whether or not Hong Kongers can get a fair trial.
现在香港人是否能够得到公平的一个司法程序，是值得讨论的一个问题。不论是中共的一些官媒。
So when the Chinese regime characterized demonstrators as separatist, extremist, terrorists. This is already setting expectations for the Hong Kong judiciary to act, not just as well as law enforcement, not only in the charges that they decide to lay against a protester, but also the sentences that they're trying to get after people. The pro-Beijing United Front movement in Hong Kong has been very aggressive in attacking judges that it feels
在香港的一些亲共者一直在攻击那些在攻击那些同情抗议者的法官，或者是没有给抗议者非常高的刑罚的法官。这是一个很大的问题。
There's an expectation that Hong Kong judges have to uphold the national security of the Communist Party. So if you render a decision that's inconsistent with that national security expectation, you may be vulnerable to disqualification. Now, this has not happened, but this is the logic that is being used to disqualify candidates at the district council, the legislative council elections, and so forth. Regarding the police, touching on Sharon's comments earlier, the Hong Kong police also went to Xinjiang as observers to learn on how they handled
香港的警队也被中国邀请到了新疆去观摩。
There was some interaction with them. The Hong Kong PLA garrison commander observed some of their passing out their parades and so forth like that. But one of the most dangerous and I think terrifying things for most Hong Kongers is that
令人担心的一件事情是，香港的警察现在他们不穿警服，他们不带警员证，你很有可能在街上被拘捕，你在家中被拘捕，没有人知道这个警察是谁，你也不知道这个警察他到底是不是香港警察，还是说来自中国大陆的一些绑架者。也就是，所以我认为这一点对香港的法治非常的具有危害性。他们现在想做什么就可以做什么。香港警察曾经被视为。
Senator King.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McAdams was here long before I arrived, so I'll defer to him.
Mr. McMahon, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. Today marks a significant day in United States history. It was 232 years ago on this very day that our forefathers signed the United States Constitution. So it's, I think with some significance that we welcome you here today to the United States Congress, the House and the Senate, to share your testimonies and as you share in this struggle, this global struggle of humanity for freedom and independence. So that Constitution signed 232 years ago today created a federal system, one with a Senate and a House that oftentimes, by design, there's some tension between these two bodies. It created 3 branches of government, an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch. It's an outgrowth of that system. As our 2 political parties that oftentimes also struggle for our ideas to move forward. It created a system of a federal system with now 50 states, but also there's a healthy tension, sometimes unhealthy, but there's a tension between that system as we struggle to move forward ideas and the rule of law. One thing that I think is important to note, though, is that we all stand together. This is a legislative and executive branch that we stand together, Republicans and Democrats, in support of the struggle for human rights, for the rule of law, and for freedom for Hong Kong. And I would echo the sentiments that have been expressed earlier, that we cannot have it both ways. We cannot have a rule of law and human rights and the struggle for freedom with the actions that we see that are undermining the very nature of that system in Hong Kong today. And so it's incredibly troubling to me to see what we have seen play out over the last 6 months. And forecasting into the future some of the efforts to undermine the sanctuaries of democracy and human rights that we see right now. So some of those sanctuaries and foundations of freedom, as we've seen in the United States and we also see in Hong Kong, the freedom of democracy and government through elections, the freedom of academia and for ideas to thrive in an academic system, the economic freedom for individuals and economic competition, and rule of law where every individual is treated fairly and equally under the law, and human rights are protected. So my concern, what I'd love for you to comment on, is where we go from here, and with some very troubling signs on the horizon. So I'd like you to comment on Mr. Wong. And let me commend all of you who are examples and the founders of freedom, whose names I hope will be remembered 232 years from now in the struggle for freedom in Hong Kong. But Mr. Wong, Ms. Ho, Mr. Chung, and Ms. Hom, for your efforts and struggles for Hong Kong. I'd love for you to comment on, first of all, Mr. Wong, the struggle in elections for individuals to step forward. Over the last several years, the government, as you referenced, has repeatedly rejected the nomination of candidates running for political office who have supported or been affiliated with self-determination. What challenges does that impose today and going forward for individuals who are willing to put themselves and their names forward? Taking that same look at the foundations of freedom of thought to academia, what support our academic institutions give to students as they raise their voices in support of intellectual freedom and human rights, and also to the economy and free economy as businesses. Ms. Ho, I believe, as you spoke about some of the concerns with Cathay Pacific and efforts that undermine individuality and freedom of thought in the marketplace of ideas and in the workplace. What is happening in these respective spheres and foundations of democracy, and how can we best support freedom of thought?
So, just let me explain what's on the mind of the young generation. In the past few years after the end of umbrella movement, lots of youngsters, no matter they uphold different kind of political belief, they still have the awareness and consensus. They hope their voice can be heard inside this institution. Apart from talk to the street, joining protests, it's also significant for us for push forward political system and election
我们
reform.
希望
Unfortunately,
推动
with those political censorship,
选举的
even
改
I'm
革。
considering to run for office, and I will make the formal announcement on late
我
of
个人也在考
September
虑是否
or
要参
early
加选
October.
举。我
I
最终
still
会
aware
在
that
本
how
月底
Beijing
或
hope
下
to
月初
bar
做
the
出
whole generation
做
of
出
youngsters
宣布
to。enter the institution. But it's lucky that with the determination
我觉得
and courage of Hong
我们
Kongers, they just turned the
香港
whole
人非
generation
常的
of
有勇
youngsters to be
气。
dissident. And not only the generation of baby boomers,
整
even the
个这
generation
个
of
年
Gen
轻一代
X
都变成
and
了
millennials,
异议人
all
士
they joined the fight with solidarity and unity. So I
他
would
们
just
都
make it clear,
团结起
Hong Kong
来
is not
在
only suffering from the
抗
political
争。
crisis, we are
我想
also
说
suffering from the
香
humanitarian
港
crisis,
不仅是
especially
在
how Hong
经历
Kong
一场
police
政治
force
危机，我们
just
也在经历
hardly
一场人道
hardline
主义危
suppress on
机，
us. No matter the sexual harassment experienced by young
包
lady
括
arrested
一些
or how
女性的
injured
抗争
protester
者在
would be
被
pulled
拘捕
down
过程
from the
当中受到
ambulance
了
by riot police
性侵扰。
directly, or how arrested person is really difficult for them and being refused to contact lawyer or even seek for any kind of
很
medical
多
treatment.
被拘捕的
I
人
think this kind of hardline
被拒绝
suppression
给予
would just turn
联
hold
系
of
律师的
my
权利。
generation and the generation younger than
我
me,
想
no
说，
matter on
像
the
我
street or
这
get
么大
inside
的
the
年轻一
institution,
代，
we will keep on together
会
with
继
this
续
uphill battle, and we hope the U.S. Congress can stand with Hong
我们
Kong.
会继续坚持这一场非常困难的战斗。我们希望美国的国会也给予我们支持。
I'll go. So yes, on the cultural side, and also on the freedom of thought side of things, it has been 90% of it probably has been eroded,
几乎90%的
at
这
least
种
the whole
自由已
show
经受到了
business
侵害
has been
至少在娱乐界
is in the control of the communist government.
娱乐界已经完
Me
全
along with
在中共的
just
统治
a
下
very
了。
small handful of
包括我在
actors
内
and
的一
singers
小部分
have spoken up for these movements, but the rest of the celebrities, they have kept their silence,
包括我在内的
and
一
they
小
have
部
been
分
forced
艺
into
人
participating in these
已经
support
对这个事件
campaigns
提
on
出了
social
抗议，
media
可是有很多的
of,
这
I
个
support
香
the
港的
Hong
艺
Kong
人
police
在
or
社交
I
媒
am
体
a
上支
protector
持
of
香港
the
政府，
national
支持
flag
香港警察
campaigns， where they have to voice out their
他们
support to
不得
the
不
Chinese government, or
宣布
else
他们
they would
对
be
中共的这样的支持， 否则的话，他们就将受到审查，他们就将受到中共的迫害。所以，我想商界他们当然就是商业界也有遇到非常大的这种压力，比如港铁，他们关闭了一些地铁站，他们在抗争期间关闭了一些地铁站，这样的话，警察就会非常容易的可以去逮捕一些抗争者。
I believe it was an article that was in the People's Daily, the state
我想这
newspaper,
一点
where
是
they have named
由《人民日报》的一个文章
saying that they
引
have
起
been
的。
helping the people. So I do think that in a free society, these
我认为在一个
businesses
自由的社会当
and
中，
corporations, they do have a
这种
obligation, a social responsibility to keep up this kind of integrity, to at least to safeguard our freedoms, which they have failed to do so.
在一个自由社会中，这些机构本应该去保障我们的自由，可是他们并没有做到。现在我们对这种问题并没有太多的解决办法，除了抗争之外。这些商界的人，他们在将他们受到的这种压力再一次压到这个香港人民的身上。我希望，比如说，如果能够去制裁香港这些迫害人权的官员，我希望这种情况将会至少获得关注。
From the academic perspective, I believe we still we need to have a correct understanding on China first. Because in 1989, when Professor Fukuyama famously declared that this is the end of the history because he believed democracy is the ultimate form of human government, and all the ideology, communism or other authoritarianism will have no place in the coming world. But apparently, 2 decades after he gave his speech, he's wrong. And we cannot still using the mindset of the old times that we should continue the engagement policy towards China. We should abandon the engagement policy and try to use a more assertive way, try to understand China. Because in the campus, we know that Chinese government, they try to establish a lot of Confucius Institute around the world. And by that Confucius Institute, they are creating propaganda, try to influence the youth in other countries, including your kids. And this is not reasonable. Canada government last year, they started to shut down some of the Confucius Institutes.
现在有一些海外政府已经采取了一些措施去关闭这样一些孔子学院，因为我支持他们这样的做法，因为这是在维护学术自由。那么中共肯定是不同意这一点的。香港人在过去几个月之内。
Across the globe, in Australia, in UK, in US, they have received a lot of threatening letters and.
我们在过去也受到了很多学术界的支持，包括海内外。
And that's why we need all the free world countries, including US, to support the academic freedom in the long run.
去支持香港的学术自由。
I think the question that all of this also is related to is China's clear exercise of soft, hard, and sharp power. And so I want to say a couple of things on the academic front.
这个问题是在问中国通过软硬不同的手段去增强它的影响力。
I think Joshua saw recently close up and personal when he spoke at Columbia what the actions
黄之锋最近在哥伦比亚大的时候，应该也已经看到了中国大陆学生的一些反应。我想这个问题并没有一个很简单的答案，可是我想，我们应该如何去实施这样一个，就是我们支持、欢迎中国学生来到美国学习。可是，我知道有一些来自中国大陆留学生根本就不敢上我的课，因为他们感到非常的害怕，因为他们知道我是一个中国人权执行主任。
Recently, if I had students in the class as observers or whatever from the mainland, so I'm saying that the censorship is on mainland students as well.
我想说，这些这种中共的这种审查也是施加到了中国大陆留学生的身上的，所以他们也是在这样的监控之下的。
And in particular, as the Protect Hong Kong Act moves forward in discussions, and I know that it's going through a legislative process. I think it would be really good to think about and address the question of the U.S. companies, because not only will the denial of export licenses really address the issue, it will address the issue of no longer being complicit, but will it address the issue of the actual category of lethal and non-lethal materials? And I wanted to point out that China hosts the China International Exhibition on Police Equipment every 2 years. The next one, they all held in Beijing, will be held on May 12th to the 15th. That's a really important date. And they sell, and they have thousands of exhibitors from all over the world and companies. And in the past, we have been monitoring many US companies have gone to exhibit and sell, and then afterwards report very proudly on the Are we singing? Not yet, right? Okay, not yet, not singing yet. But they've also reported on the millions of dollars of contracts that they were able to secure in Beijing. So I think one thought might be to, aside from or in addition to export licenses, what about technology transfer? What about collaboration? What about them training the Chinese partner companies? What are the other things that need to be in place so that, because China has been named an economic competitor for the U.S., it's not an even playing field. They're an economic competitor where the SOEs are dominating the economy. You are not investing at all in your companies. But China is investing in all the key industries, and that is technology, and AI,
各种各样的关键领域投资，如人工智能、金融、军事等领域。
So I want to ask one final thought for what can be done going forward. Next year on the Human Rights Council, at the end of this year, China rotates off, and according to the rules, can't come back on in 2020. I think that is the year in which the U.S. government, I know you have left the Council for various analyses of its effectiveness, but that does not take away the fact that the U.S. is still viewed as a leading player among all the member states in the Council. You can exercise your role as an observer. You can also exercise your very influential role in working with other democratic governments to issue joint statements, joint initiatives, and joint. So I think 2020 is particularly important, and in particular, that is the year to push, because you're also on the NGO committee of ECOSOC. That is the year to support and push for the reforms that are needed to allow independent civil society groups to be able to participate. As you know, my organization had applied for ECOSOC status, and over the last 30 years, and both times you can't make it out of the NGO committee because China just looks at us and goes, and that's it. It's end of story. So I think it's very important that the U.S. can raise the issues not only as an observer in Human Rights Council, but in the General Assembly. And I know you're quite active on the third committees. That's where I think it's really important to exercise leadership. 2020
进行更多的参与，同时也在联合国大会上能够有更多的参与。
threatening everybody else to support them while they're not there, but the point is they won't have a vote. So I think it's a good year to get some traction.
I'll just make a couple quick comments. One is U.S. has law enforcement cooperation with the Hong Kong police, and this may need to be reconsidered or looked at more strongly in the future. Second, basically as far as companies go in Hong Kong, there's a one country, two systems apartheid-like system where patriotic companies are privileged over other companies.
在香港有这样一个情况，就是那些所谓的爱国的公司，他们会享受到更好的待遇。香港有非常多的大的公司是接受来自中共驻港办公室的这个资金的。如果你
There's also a lot of things that happens on Hong Kong related to academic and other freedoms that are above the water, below the water line.
学术界也有非常多的事情发生。比如香港，香港的警察现在在抗争在集会地点附近搜查人们的身份证，那么即使你可能不是抗争者，那么你的身份信息也会被录入。
I think it was around 2014 or 2012. And my last comment would be that Chinese state-owned enterprises incorporated in Hong Kong should not be treated as Hong Kong companies.
我想，还有一点就是中国大陆的这种公司，在港的公司不应该被看作是和香港的公司一样的。
Senator King.
Thank you. Ms. Holm, I'm struggling with the fact that we've got an island of democracy in a sea of repression.
我觉得我们现在在一个压迫的这样一个汪洋大海中，有一个小岛是有民主和自由的。
You've got Hong Kong. You've got two societies moving in the opposite direction.
这两个社会在向两个完全不同的方向在行驶，在前进着。
As a practical matter, there's 7 million, I understand, Hong Kongers in
那么香港有700万人，你认为有没有什么实际的办法？
The other piece that I wanted to ask is there any sympathy for the Hong Kongers within the mainland?
另一个我想问的问题是，中国大陆内部有没有一些同情香港的人？ 有没有人对于香港人这种对于言论自由的、对于民主的追求有一些同情？我想了解一下这个问题。我可能没有一个完整的答案，可是我想说。
A control state is China has built a whole ecosystem of control through the technology.
中共政府它通过科技、通过法律，已经建立了一个完整的这种控制性的这种系统，然后让人们进行自我审查，让人们互相举报，这是一个整个的一个生态系统。这种思想控制，同时。 还有这种非常不对等的权利。
Notwithstanding the mass crackdowns on lawyers, notwithstanding the torture on the mainland, notwithstanding the killing of untold thousands in 1989 of tanks, they have not. The Communist Party has not been able to shut down people.
尽管这种权利，一方是人权活动人士被极力的迫害，一方是强大的中共政权，可是这么多年来，中国政权并没有成功的使这些声音真正的消失，使这些反对的声音真正的消失。
That has over 100,000 people every year on June 4th remembering. It was Hong Kong students, it was Hong Kong journalists who went up to Beijing to support the democracy movement.
1989年的时候，香港有非常多的学生和记者到北京去支持这种北京1989年这些女学生。
Can the Beijing regime tolerate Hong Kong?
北京可以容忍香港这样的行为吗？北京难道不会视香港为一种威胁吗？一方面，北京视香港为一个威胁，可是另一方面，北京也认为香港这种高度的经济繁荣是就像在像一只。
They're trying to keep half of Hong Kong, denying of reality of
他们非常珍视香港的香港给他们带来这种经济上的利益。
We have had a history of working courts and independence. You can't just wipe it. Sympathy for mainlanders. I know.
关于中国大陆是否有人同情香港人的这样一个问题，我之前在香港参加过这样的活动，我曾经看到过中国大陆人在香港。 参与这样的，可是当这些人在香港这些中国大陆的人参加香港的抗争活动的时候，他们远在中国大陆的父母却会受到这种警察的威胁，说哦，你的儿子在香港参加了这样的活动。所以我想。
And are inspired by, that's what Beijing is afraid of. They're afraid. That's why they first censored everything.
大陆人的行为同时也在激励着香港人，这才是北京最害怕的事情。中国大陆也有一些人，他们有这种可以翻墙软件来获得海外的自由信息。
For the Hong Kong democracy movement online, what has happened to them?
也有很多人在网上支持香港的运动，可是他们却受到了监禁和迫害。
And Mr. King, they're not able to tell mainlanders who do see what they're seeing.
可是他们中共到现在为止依然没有办法去使这些反抗的声音消失，他们也没有办法让这些能够看到真实信息的大陆人改变他们的想法，因为他们也想要自由。 可是香港却是在前线的，香港的抗争是在最前线。我想在这间屋子里也会有人，也会有北京来的人。
I don't want any misquotes.
And I want to thank you for your courage to speak the truth.
我想感谢你能够说出真话这样的勇气。
To make it clear to the regime in Beijing that democracy is an important value.
我们想确保北京的政府知道我们是非常珍视民主这个价值的。
I want to thank this panel for coming before this commission, providing some perspective and expertise on this important and very timely topic. As many of you know, I spent more than 5 years living in Guangzhou.
我曾经在广州住过5年，我在上世纪90年代曾经在广州居住过5年，在一家私人企业工作。
With the ongoing erosion of autonomy and human rights in the region, and I will tell you, I stand with the citizens of Hong Kong.
我见证了香港这种民主受到的逐渐的侵蚀。那么，我想说，我和香港人站在一起。
And 6 LegCo leaders who came to my home state of Montana. This event was important to better understand the situation in Hong Kong and identifying what some of the key issues were and have a very open and free exchange.
来到了我在蒙大拿州的家中，向我讲述香港的情况。
And the entire world must continue to support the
我认为
autonomy
整个世界必须继续支持香港的
It
自
is
治和
one
民主，
country, 2 systems. I was in
因为
Hong
是
Kong
一
on
国
June
两制。
30th, 1997, and saw the Union Jack come down for the last time. The Hong Kong central government needs to work with protesters to accept the demands put forward by the citizens of the country,
1994年主权移交
and
的
the
时
use
候，
of
我
excessive
就在香港。
force by the police must end immediately.
我想警察的这种过度武力必须立刻结束。
Our 2 countries. Question, I'll start with Mr. Wong. The protesters have formed a consensus around 5 demands, including withdrawal of the extradition bill and, of course, universal
关于
suffrage.
5大诉求，
Does the government need to comply with all 5 demands immediately, or is there a phased or alternative outcome that might be acceptable?
政府是否现在就是必须立刻回应5大诉求？
since 3 decades ago, even earlier than I born.
香港人在很多年前就开始进行了追求普选的这种抗争，在我出生之前就已经开始了。我们的5大诉求也是在现有的这种法律条框之下的。
and autonomy, especially with the quote of Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong.
北京也是对做出了这种港人自治的承诺的。
Until the day we have democracy, even with
我
strongly
想我们的
experienced
抗
the
争
state
将会继
capitalist
续进
regime
行。
crackdown on Hong Kong human rights. So I would say that now we have continued our summer of discontent and becoming the year of discontent.
我想说，我们现在夏季的这种抗争之下，已经进入了抗争之年。
Let me, if I could, interject. Thank you. I've got a vote coming. I've got to get to. I'm probably going to get there quickly. But a follow-up question: How do you expect Chief Executive Carrie Lam?
你认为香港特首林郑月娥将如何回应这样的诉求？她又有多大的权利？还是说北京有最终的决定权？
Carrie Lam is a puppet government handpicked by Beijing.
我认为林郑月娥只是北京政府的一个傀儡。
What we realize is withdraw the bill or not, stopping police brutality or not. 我
们现在已经意识到，是否撤回条例，是否停止警方暴力，这些所有的一切都取决于北京，而不是林郑月娥。
from
他只是在
Beijing
听命于
authorities,
北
especially
京。
on how the State Council in Beijing regularly hold a press conference in the past few weeks to criticize on Hong Kong protests. It already showed that how KLM
过
can't
去
solve the
一直
political
在
crisis
开
by her
这样的官方新闻发布
personal
会去谴责香港的抗争者，我觉得这已经说明了北京在这个问题上的权利。
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. And I think Mr. Smith has one additional question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate it. If I could, and Ms. Hom, you did mention it, so and I think it bears a little further scrutiny. One of the notions of there's no such thing as a free lunch, in my opinion, applies with on steroids to the issue of Confucius centers, which are just agents of influence. Pushing the
我想提一下孔子学院这个问题，就是他们在海外不停地推动北京的这种。
as well as on those entities, universities, colleges that get access to the mainland China especially, and get an enormous number of perks, money, physical plant venues for their colleges or universities,
有非常多的美国大学，包括纽约大学在内。
and asked that I could go and speak, and he allowed me to come and give a speech or a lecture on human rights in Shanghai at the NYU campus. But the concern is that they're en route to 1,000 or something like that globally, that is to say the Chinese government with these Confucius centers. We have 96 in the United States, 82 are public, 14 are private.
孔子学院在美国有90多家，他们每年都招入几千名学生。
And that is look at the terms and conditions, which really is mostly secret. But we have a situation where hand-picked teachers come to the United States, come to Africa,
美国高校签订的条款都非常的秘密，然后他们自己挑选北京。
But it's all about the worldview and the domestic defense of Xi Jinping's policies.
可是他们的教材中却有非常多的他们共产党的一些价值观。
about what's going on in Hong Kong right now, and those universities and colleges, U.S.-based, that are in China today, what are they able to say and do without fear of retaliation?
美国在中国设置的这样一些学校中，他们这样的美国高校，他们能在香港这种事情中能起到什么样的作用？比如NYU 在中国的上海设有分校。
Start off. Thank you. I think it's important also to note that the Confucius Institutes and the pushbacks have also been led by really active, wonderful activism by Students for Free Tibet and the Tibetan community supported by the Uyghurs. And I think we've had some really good victories that show we really can push back and get the institutions to be more
很大一部分程度是由一些西藏的学生。 在推动的。
The quick answer to what are they saying? It's what can they say will always be under the guideline right now. Under
在中国的这个美国的高校，他们在能说什么？
Where every single party non-member has to participate in political study. That the line of the day, what can be reported in Xinhua, what can be reported in the news, everything will be determined from the top. And if you say anything, and as you know, under the new regulations, under the Cybersecurity Act for the news is defined very broadly to include opinion, a commentary, including blogging, including. So you can't say, blog, think anything except what the line comes down.
现在新闻定义已经扩大为包括评论，包括博客。
Backed up by black hands, led by the U.S. Interfering in domestic an affair and violating China's sovereignty. This is the same old chestnut we all hear over and over, and they got to get a better story here. But that's what they keep saying, and so I think that is now the dominant what anyone can say. Because if you say anything against that, for example, you have a different idea. Not only are you violating the new news regulations, you're also running the risk of subversion.
所以就是，如果中国人他不光是在新闻里面，他甚至如果是在博客上发表一些支持香港或者是一些反对中共的言论，那么他也有可能面对这种审查和迫害。
My friends and colleagues say to the U.S., "Please save us."
我在香港的一些朋友一直在对我说啊，希望美国能够能够拯救我们。可是，我想说，全世界的人都应该去帮助香港减少他们这种抗争的损失。我想美国政府和这个委员会能做的就是尽量的减少这样的损失。
So this is like going inside of a black box, but let me speculate. Yeah. I am pretty sure that all the curricula are approved and reviewed. I'm pretty sure they don't exercise academic freedom and say, here's the creative thing I can do about Hong Kong.
我想说，那么在中国的这些美国大学，他们的课程表一定都是经过审查、经过中共当局批准的。
You will know, yeah, there are just big holes in that history. What's happening, and all of the you'll probably read about the diverse ethnic groups in China. Happy people, happy Tibetans, happy Uyghurs. You know, you'll probably see that version of what is happening. So I'm pretty sure. The other thing is, if those institutes are also monitored. So if anyone says anything that actually challenges the dominant narrative, I'm pretty sure that teacher will be in trouble. So I think it's pretty tightly controlled, and money is the
这样的学校应该也是不会允许的。
to universities, and I think not only just for the Confucius Institutes, they sometimes come along with other really good goods like an endowed chair, like money for a chair, like money for a program. So I think there's this kind of
中共在海外的这种意识形态输出，除了孔子学院之外，他们有的时候还会给一些机构、一些委员会一些资助。
As somebody who loves Hong Kong. And personally and professionally, and as a member of the from the private sector, I think we need to also remember that every single SOE, state-owned enterprise, has a party committee, and now that requirement has extended to companies with foreign investments and foreign companies. I had a Canadian company ask me, how could that be? Why are they making us establish a party committee? I said, you're not being targeted.
有一家在加拿大在中国的公司问我说，我们为什么要被要求建立一个党支部？我说，他们并不是在针对你，而是所有的公司都要建立一个党支部。
Look at the annual reports of China Telecom, China Mobile. They have pictures of the annual meeting of the party committee saying, we did good. The party committee's happy with us this year. We complied. So I think the American companies going in, there are listed SOEs. I think Apple Daily reported over 120 that are listed, 100 Chinese companies listed on the Hong Kong Exchange. They all have party committees within their management structure.
我知道，苹果日报已经报道，就是有120家美国在上海上市的公司，他们都有党支部。
Thank you very much. You've been very patient. You've been here for 2.5 hours. I'm the last person, so you have to bear with me just a little bit more. But this hearing is winding down. First of all, let me thank everybody for being here. I mean, everybody's testimony has been, I think, informative and
我想，每个人的发言都有非常多的信息，给了我们非常多的信息和帮助。
You know, Congressman Smith earlier on in the hearing referenced kind of the past inactions by the U.S. government in response to human rights abuses in China, and
讨论了美国政府过去在中国问题上的态度。
This would do it or whatever. Really, things haven't got any better. Things are continuing to get worse. And I think it's fair to say that, for the most part, the U.S. government has been very good at kind of talking the talk. You know, when it comes to Tibet, we issue the obligatory statement that we respect the rights of the Tibetan people to practice their religion, and
美国政府在语言上做的还是比较好的，我们在语言上去支持西藏人。可是语言上并不能够真正的对形势有所改变，所以我们现在提出的这些法案，希望能够就是真正的有所行动，能够真正的产生一定的效果。
Items for us to pass in the House and Senate. And I believe, and I can probably give you an assurance that we will do that.
我相信我们是会这样做的。
Overnight, Senator Rubio talked about hearings that are happening in the Senate. We have assurances from the relevant committees in the House that they will move on this.
我们也得到了来自国会其他议员的保证，他们会支持这项法案，所以我认为。
On that, and we will follow through. So we have our assignments. Mr. Wong and Ms. Ho and Mr. Zhang, you've traveled, along with some of your colleagues who are behind you, and I want to recognize them as well.
我想感谢黄之锋何韵诗，你们从这么远的地方来，以及你们背后你们的这些同事从这么远的地方来呼吁国际社会对香港的支持。
For you to say. Why it is so important that the international community and the United States support why that is critical to the success and what you are doing. And I also would like to get everybody's response to this, and that is.
同时，我也想知道所有人对这一点的反应。
Be honest with you, I have not. I've been somewhat disappointed in. The current our administration's response.
老实说，目前为止，我并不满意美国政府对于香港的做法。我认为，对于香港问题的这种处理态度，我认为我们可以更加强硬一些。我想知道你们认为美国政府现在可以做的有哪些？应该做的是哪些？
Speaking to the what advice we could give the Trump administration.
那么我们对川普政府有哪些建议？
I would say that
我想说
U.S. responses have to be resolute, to use the Hong Kong term.
美国的态度必须非常的坚决。如果我们不强硬，如果我们动摇，那么你将不会得到来自习近平和共产党的任何回应。他们会。
Is what rules Beijing right now, and even in Hong Kong and Tamar. So this deal making doesn't really mean much to them because whatever deal that they make, they're going to subvert. Just like the rule of law.
对于北京来说，协议并不奏效，因为你无论与他们达成了怎样的协议，他们都将不去遵守这种协议。
We call it party speak, and I think the administration has to be aware of this party speak and understand it.
我认为，当下政府应该更加理解中共的这种。
This is the first ideological confrontation of the new Cold War. Whether or not you agree to Cold War or not, the discussions have been out there.
这是现在是一场意识形态的战争，也是一种新的冷战。
The people here, the witnesses here.
今天坐在这里的这些见证人，他们想要拯救香港的自治，想要拯救香港的体系。可是，在北京，在香港的一些地区，他们试图将这种一国两制武器作为一种武器来攻击美国。
Weaponization of one country, two systems, or the two systems specifically, is looking at
将
how
这种
China
体
can
系
use Hong Kong's advantages,
军事
such
化
as U.S. customs treatment of it, to exploit the world. We've seen it
是
with the
中共试图
recent
在利
scandal
用
with
香
the
港的这种
United
经济上
Nations.
的优惠待遇，
Patrick Ho was basically found
在利
guilty
用
of state capture the
全
United
球
Nations
其他的
to
国家。
promote the Belt and Road Initiative.
他们现在也在推广“一带一路”政策，“一带一路”的项目。
From Ukraine, that was done through a whole series of deceptions and manipulations of Hong Kong's special status.
这种也是完全是在欺骗世界人民，同时也在利用香港的这种优惠、经济上的优惠、贸易上的优惠待遇。
And anybody affiliated with the CPPCC or the NPC differently than how we would treat regular Hong Kongers. Thank you.
Ms. Horn?
I really think that's a scary thought to give advice to Trump or the administration, but I think that any actions by the administration has to hold true to the U.S.'s core values. The U.S. has core values on human rights and democracy.
所有的政策都应该反映美国的这种核心价值。那么，美国对于人权来说是有核心价值的，是保护人权的。
The ideological confrontation
这种意识形态的冲突
is actually much more than that. It's really China against the world. It's not two models of
不仅
equal
是
legitimacy.
其实是一个很大的问题，而是其实是中共与全世界的这种对抗。
It's the model that the international community, with Eleanor Roosevelt, in fact, playing a very key role in the Universal Declaration, it was a world order that came out to say we will never again have what happened in Nazi Germany. We will never again have mass detentions.
二战结束后，
we will never have mass trampling on human beings.
全世界似乎是签署了这样一个约定，就是我们再也不要让发生在纳粹德国的事情再一次发生。可是现在又有了中国共产党的这种模式，所以我想说，这场冲突其实是中共和这个全世界的这种抗争这种冲突。我想中共应该面临更多的后果。当美国站起来发言的时候，这些话。我相信北京现在我相信北京现在就有人在听我们在说这些话。我们现在的直播应该北京的当局政府也在看。中共这个政府它是想要一个政权的合法性的。如果没有合法性，这个政权就没有办法继续执政。
Mr. Jung.
所以我觉得美国政府需要指出，我们不会给你的政权这样的合法性，因为你现在的行为就像暴徒一样。
All the fights with other countries in the free world. China is expanding their military in the South China Sea.
中共在南海扩张他们的军事势力。
They have the ownership of the South China Sea, which severely threatens the security in the Asia Pacific region.
对于亚太地区的安全来讲有非常大的威胁。
Regarding the Huawei incident, and
那么包括在香港的华为案件。
Only China, I think, and This is unreasonable, and that explains how assertive China is, and that's why I believe only the American, you are the only superpower that can really try to.
我想美国是这个世界上唯一一个能够去挑战中国的这样一个国家。
Silent invasion. I use the wording according to the Professor Hamilton in Australia. They are using a very silent invasion, using their economic dominance.
中国现在通过经济上的这种主导，在全世界实施他们的所谓像这种殖民一般的政策。
Some East Asian countries and like the country like Sri Lanka, they have to lease a military port to China for 99 years, and apparently this is a new imperialism for me, and I believe only U.S. can contain China. And also, secondly, I believe why U.S. should be concerned about Hong Kong is that you have many interests in here, and you have to secure your interests. For example,
因为美国在香港有非常多的利益，那么你应该去保护这些利益。
U.S. sanctioned that Hong Kong should not allow a ship which carrying the oil from the Iran. And the point is that Hong Kong government, they ignore the U.S. sanction and they allow the ship from the Iran to come to Hong Kong and try to carrying those oils back to Iran. And apparently this undermines your interest, and that's why this is one of the most important reasons you should care about Hong Kong, and you should do something instead of just maybe issuing statements to support Hong Kong.
那么美国应该停止这样的行为。
This historic fight in Hong Kong has only been possible with the determination of the youngsters and of the Hong Kong
香港人
people.
之所以能够继续这场历史性的抗争，当然他们的动力是非常一大部分是来自于年轻人的这种坚持。
The continuous attention on Hong Kong issues, and of course to the push of this act, because this has contributed in giving hope.
我认为这些美国的这种关注和对这种法案的推进，其实是在给香港人希望，是在告诉香港的年轻人，你们其实正在改变着世界。这其实真的是一个全球性的这种冲突，是我们对普世价值的一种保护。
We would be seeing a momentum in the international communities.
我们希望这种法案，如果这两个法案如果通过的话，那么其他的国家也许会提出更多的类似的法案去保护香港。
Actually destroying these values on a daily basis. So thank you very much.
Mr. Wong.
With the sharp power expansion from China to Canada and Australia, the Belt and Road Initiative
中共对加拿大和澳洲的这种渗透，以及他们通过“一带一路”的这个项目对其他国家的这种渗透。
After entering WTO, after promise on joint declaration, and even having the negotiation with US on the trade deal, we all are aware the uprising China model is just the expansion of authoritarian rule and without any
扩张的中国模式是对全球民主价值的一种挑战。香港人是站在最前线，在挑战的这种专制的集权。如果香港倒下的话，那么接下来下一个倒下的可能就是整个的这个自由世界。我希望国会能够通过香港人权与民主法案。现在我们不仅是在经历一场政治危机，也是在经历一场人道主义危机。2年前，我看电视的时候看到了北京当局。
Which means the authoritarian rule represented by President Xi will be the Emperor Xi. So that's the
我当时看到了北京当局无限期的延长了这个中共主席的这个任期，那么我就意识到，将我关进监狱里面的这个习近平，他现在已经成为了几乎是一个君主一样的这样的角色。
And I think it's the time to thank all the congressmen and senators in the past few years and even in the past few decades, really paying attention to protest movement in Hong Kong.
我现在想要借这个机会感谢那些在过去几个月、在过去几年中一直关切着香港形势的美国的议员们。
Let me thank the staff of the Commission for all the work that they did in preparing this hearing. Let me thank again the panelists. And to our friends from Hong Kong, let me thank you.
我想感谢所有为准备这场听证会做出努力的工作人员。
Action here in the Congress is, your courage that we see unfolding on our television screens and we read about in the newspapers. I have to tell you, I think for everybody here.
我想今天在场的所有人，你们都激励着我。
We're a diverse
我们今天有一个非常多元化的这个政治组成。可是我们一起和香港人站在一起。
I can't thank you enough for being here. So, thank you, and this hearing is adjourned.